Welcome, everybody. I want to call the meeting to order. I'm going to do a quick roll call. James Chura.
Present.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Chura. Commissioner Donaldson.
Present.
Commissioner Early.
Present.
Commissioner Garrett Ferguson.
Present.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Present.
Commissioner Ridgway.
Present.
Commissioner Van Leer.
Present.
Commissioner Wong.
Present.
Commissioner Zaid.
Present.
Commissioner Adams.
Present.
Commissioner Benito.
Present.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Present.
And Commissioner Reeves, that's me, I'm here. Okay. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is have community listening session. Is there anyone that would like to speak at this time? I know you're like the only one here. And you're eating. Anyone would like to speak can step up to the mic over here. Actually, this is Miss Williams' job. I'm just trying to fill in while she's busy. And our guest hasn't arrived yet, right?
They're not on, they've not come up yet, so.
So maybe we can just move to.
Okay.
Maybe we can just move to some of the committee reports. We can move to the committee
Well,
reports.
I'm a little stuck here. I don't want to just skip over. Well, I guess we have to go back to it then, huh?
Do we have to make a motion to change the?
Mm-hmm. Well, so minutes are not ready. If someone would like to make a motion that we do double minutes at the next meeting, they'll be ready then.
I move to do double minutes at the next meeting.
Can I get a second? Move the reading of the minutes to the next meeting.
So
they're
next
not ready.
meeting we'll approve the minutes from this meeting and then the minutes from the meeting before.
Right.
I
A second.
That motion passes. We'll do the minutes at the next meeting. Oh. Do you want to call? You don't. Roll call. Okay. Back to the names. Commissioner Chura.
Aye.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Aye.
Commissioner Early. Commissioner Garrett Ferguson.
Aye.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Aye.
Commissioner Ridgway.
Aye.
Commissioner Van Leer.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
Commissioner Zaid.
Aye.
Commissioner Adams.
Aye.
Commissioner Benito.
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Aye.
And I really don't get a vote unless I need to break a tie. So that motion is passed. One thing we can discuss if you want to right now is chair pro temp for the next meeting. Anyone has a motion, a movement, something?
I would like to nominate Jan Ridgway for chair pro tem for the next meeting.
I second.
Okay. Can we just go with the ayes and the nays? I don't want to read y'all names. I'm pretty sure we all agree, right? Anyone in favor? Anyone opposed? Commissioner Ridgway will be chairman pro tem for the next meeting. And we had offered towards employment as a site for the next meeting, if that's okay with you. It's right around the corner from here, but it's right around the corner from here on 33rd and St. Clair. Towards employment, 3301 St. Clair Avenue.
Can you say the address one more time, please?
3301 St. Clair Avenue. I wanted to see who was coming up to see if it was our guest.
To the chair, do we want to move on to another portion?
I just heard the doorbell, so I was waiting to see if that was our guest. If it is not, we will keep the meeting moving. Did anybody come in here? Okay, well, we will move on. I didn't see anybody come through the door yet. So let's get the report from the Rules Committee.
To the chair, I'm not sure, would another committee that has a smaller, report or shorter report want to go first in case
Right.
our guests arrive?
That's fine. I was just going by the order on here. Oh, and let me say real quickly, because I've watched a lot of the videos from home, make sure your mic is on and you're talking as clearly as possible into the mic, because it's not fair when you miss a lot of things that are being said. And please make sure you're recognized by the chair before you speak, and speak to the chair and not at each other, to each other, if you don't mind. Oh, we're going to put that on hold because our guests have arrived. Late. So we will now be going into the training portion of this meeting.
You can attach this or take it off, however you please. Sure, come on. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves here.
Okay.
You're on the agenda.
Perfect.
Come on forward, the camera's got you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Deputy Chief Dorothy Todd. I am the Chief of Staff for the Cleveland Division of Police. Chief Wayne Drummond had another appointment, so he is unable to be here this evening. And just a little bit about what I do. I oversee all of the internal operations for the division. I work in the same office area as Chief Drummond. All of the administration portion, investigations come through the office, and I review those on behalf of the chief. I also oversee the employee assistance unit, our case preparation, policy unit, compliance unit. So it's a little bit about what I do. Unless anyone has any questions, I will turn you over to our training section.
Thanks.
Is it possible to turn up the volume on their mic?
Yeah, I can hold it close or talk loud. Does that work? Okay. yeah, sorry. Project my voice. So my name is Mark Maguth. It's my pleasure. I serve as the commander over the Bureau of Support Services. What that involves is the training section. That also involves the record section and the personnel section. I've actually had kind of an opportunity to work with the commission before, especially Jason, through our training review committee, because a member of the commission is a part of that. So it's good because I can solicit direct feedback and kind of put that input into our training curriculum, right? So I'm definitely looking forward to that, going forward. With me, I will allow, I have Lieutenant Jen Hernandez and I have Lieutenant Sean Smith, who's over our training section. Lieutenant Hernandez is with us because she has intricate knowledge over the policy unit and the compliance unit. She's no longer assigned there. We were sad to see her go. But right now it's Commander Carney and Captain Simon, but unfortunately they're not able to be here, but she's at least here in case there's questions. We can get you some answers, okay? Jen, if you want to talk to him briefly, or?
Yeah, I can just, yeah. Like Commander said, my name is Jennifer Hernandez. I worked with the everything related to the consent decree from 2016 to about 4 months ago when I recently got promoted. So I'm here to answer any questions if you have about the consent decree and the process that we have.
Here's Lieutenant Smith.
Good evening. My name is Lieutenant Sean Smith. I'm in charge of the training and education section for the division. I've been in training since about 2008. I was an instructor first, then I was in charge of the training academy, the academy, and now in charge of training for the division.
They're the experts, they're here, so if you have a question, feel free to shoot it off. We're doing a training session here, and let me just kind of preface this with, when this was kind of being set up, Jason was nice, he provided us kind of with a list. We provided an anticipated schedule that's not concrete, it's not set in stone, right? We just wanted to put some ideas out there to kind of get the mind going. But I know I talked to him about a training committee, which I would love to sit down, because what do you need, right? We want to give and make sure it's available, the training necessary for you to be successful, right? And then once we get in a good place, then we work together, with the development of the actual training. But again, those blocks aren't set in stone. I could give you 30 minutes of search and seizure. I could give you 3 weeks of search and seizure, right? Same with anything else that's on that piece of paper. It's kind of one of those things we need to sit down and kind of discuss and see what your comfortability is, what involvement you want. If there's a topic on there that you're interested in, that you want to know about, by all means, let us know. And that's something we can work on to kind of get to you, right? That's how we want to go. Absolutely.
Excuse me, you all introduce yourselves to us. Can we introduce ourselves to you?
I would absolutely love that. I would appreciate it. Yep, please.
I'm Commissioner Roy Reeves.
Commissioner Charles Donaldson, thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Chandra Benito. Okay. My name is Chandra Benito, and I am really looking forward to working with you guys and meeting you, so thanks for being here.
Commissioner James Cho.
I'm Commissioner Terry Wong.
Commissioner Kyle Early.
Commissioner Alana Garrett Ferguson.
Commissioner Pete Van Leer.
Commissioner Adriana Rodriguez.
Commissioner Pete Kennedy, it's good to be with you.
Commissioner Dr. John Adams.
I am Commissioner Jan Ridgway.
I'm Commissioner Sharina Zayed.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really nice to meet you. I wish I could remember names that good. I probably won't, right? So, and my eyesight's going, so it's time for some glasses, but I'm going to do my best, right? So if I walk close, I promise it's just to look at the name tag. Under discussion, it sounded like we're going to talk a little bit about the command and the structure of the division. So I have some pictures. I see that you have handouts. We actually printed some as well in case you needed them. But if you don't, we'll go off of this. Is there a little clicker thing, or just point to you and you'll advance? And we always like to start our training off with kind of the mission statement of the division and our core values. If you ever come to our training and you're in our academy, you'll actually hear our recruits kind of shouting them out, right? Sometimes it takes people back initially, but it's to help ingrain these core values into it that we believe in. So we can advance from the mission statement. Yeah, you can go to the next one. Sorry. Yep. And these are those values, right? We call it our pride statement. We build it into a lot of our training. And it's something that we feel embodies the professional police officer, right? And things we look for: respect, integrity, dedication, excellence. These are core values, right, of a 21st century police officer. So we feel it's really important to continue to ingrain it not only in our training, into our academy unit, but into our officers. So if you even see our new logo, it's incorporated into it. We can go to the next. These are locations. I talk quick, so if you have a question, throw a hand up and I'll shut up, okay? But these are some of the locations that we have for the division. We just wanted to put it on to make you aware. Again, if you need anything more about it, right, what it may be stored there, or what it looks like, or directions to it, anything along the lines, please pass on that information to us. We're happy to help you. But as you can see, we kind of span an area, right, from this. One of the things that I don't see on there is we do have some like joint partnership buildings, right? We operate out of a strike force. I can get the address of that if you really need to know the location of it. But there are a couple kind of outliers, and we are right in a move, so a proposed move in the future. So some of these could be changing. One of the things I just wanted to introduce is the ranks and insignias, right? We wear these things on our arms or collars or pins or anything like that. I thought it'd be important to at least bring them up and talk to you, because you're going to see that. You're going to see different videos or reports referring to these different ranks. And some of you may not be familiar with it. So it was kind of a newer thing to me, right, when I got into the police department. So we could flip to the next, Jason. And here we go. So I tried to put it in a top-down order, right? So structure of our division, we assume a quasi-militaristic structure, right, is what I call it. We're not a paramilitaristic organization at all. We're a quasi-militaristic. We share some similarities to it, such as a structure, written directives, things like that, but we're not an occupying force. We're not being solicited by anyone to, kind of go to war. What we're doing is we're just adopting some of these. So if we need a chain of command, if we need to be able to delineate orders, quick decisions, we're able to do that in our division. Sitting at the top of that is the chief of police, right? Some would say that it's the public safety director, the mayor, council shares it with the community, okay? But internally, this is ours. So we have the chief of police, we have one of them, we have deputy chiefs. There's 4 of them. You've met Deputy Chief Todd, who's the executive officer, kind of the number 2 in command. Have you been able to meet any others? I'm not. Okay, so I'm sure they'll be coming through, and you will at some point, right? But there are others. There's 3 others. We're going to get into all of that. I'm just kind of talking about it. There's pictures, right? I like pictures. Commanders, there's 12 of us and a traffic commissioner. Captains, lieutenants, and sergeants is kind of that linear order. I wanted to put something on here, and it's the different patches between sergeant and something you'll see on a police officer's arm, because sometimes we even have to explain it to the public or to other individuals, is there's a little stripe underneath it. We call that a rocker. Well, what that rocker delineates is that you are a training officer. So they have attended advanced classes and received certification to be able to train. And that means that they've met recommendation qualifications, they've actually attended training, some of it was scenario-based learning. They requalify into that as well. So they are delineated with those rocker patches. So just in case you see a video or something along that lines, you'll see those. So even our police officers will carry that patch as well. Now, that doesn't carry a specific rank. It's a designation of that certification, just so you're aware.
Where is the patch, General?
So, yes. So, unfortunately, we don't have any sergeants to this, but it would be right underneath the shoulder patch. So you would have your shoulder patch here, and you would have that blue sergeant or the STO, what we call it, or the FTO patch underneath the shoulder patch. Another place... Oh, yeah, and rank insignias, I'm sorry, where they would be designated is up on our shoulders. So you'll see that as well. Yep. So it's right up here. So if you see that, who knew I was going to get the model today, right? But it's right up here. That's where you'll see chief, deputy chief, commander, captain, and lieutenant. Sergeant is designated with the patch underneath the arm. Okay? And it's worn on our outermost garment. So if we have a jacket, it should be displayed outside of our jacket in that same manner. Okay? Yeah. I apologize. Oh, yeah, I apologize. So they want me to make a clarification. I'll make sure that the rocker patch that says field training officer and supervisory training officer, they are training in the field. Okay, that's post-academy. So they go through the academy for about 7.5 months. When they complete it, they go into what's field training for the next 6 months. And that is the designation of those trainers in the field who will actually train them. Is there any kind of questions about that or anything else I can clarify? Yeah, that's a great point. Something I didn't think about is shirts change, right? So you'll see officers wear a blue shirt, a navy blue shirt. Sergeants will wear a navy blue shirt as well. Lieutenants and above will actually wear a white shirt. So there is a change, there is a designation to the color of shirt you're wearing as well.
You explained it to me on the slide a little bit about how some of these are civil service designation when you have to test, and then what happens, and how you can have, for instance, a sergeant who's a commander.
Let's talk about that because a great point. So sergeant through captain is a civil service tested position. So if I want to be a sergeant, I take a competitive promotional examination and you score on a list and you are selected through the director to be appointed to that rank. For commander, deputy chief, and chief, they're appointed positions. There is not a competitive examination. It is a interview process to receive those ranks. And I'll use myself as, sure, it's commander, deputy chief, and the chief are appointed positions. They are not civil service competitive positions. So, what's that? They're appointed by the mayor. So you carry a mayor appointment. So like, I'll use myself as an example, right? Civil service, I am a lieutenant, but I'm appointed to the rank of commander, right? So I hope my appointment never runs out, but if it does, I would go back to my civil service rank of a lieutenant, okay?
For the supervisor training officer and the field training officer, that is for people training other officers that would wear that patch, or is that when you're new and you're in training, you wear that patch?
Great question. That is the trainer who's training the new, we call our newer officers in the field, we call them probationary police officers. So the FTO and the STO would be training the probationary officers, and the FTO and the STO, the trainer, would carry that patch, would wear that patch. Yep, the probationary officer would have nothing under the shoulder patch. Yep. Good question.
You mentioned that there's one chief of police, 4 deputy chiefs, and 12 commanders. Can you tell us how many captains there are, lieutenants and sergeants? Or is that too many?
Off the top of my head, I cannot.
Okay.
I will say,
No worries.
we can get that to you if you need to know it, but unfortunately, my memory only spans so far. Yeah. Captains, roughly 18. Lieutenants, mid-50s, right? Sergeants, 200 to 300s, right? So, and that's just Mark's rough guesstimate to you, right? But we can get the specific totals for our staffing report.
Just really quick to clarify, earlier you mentioned, I believe you said 6 or 7 months of field training. So that's for probationary officers?
Great question. So the academy right now, so when we bring in someone from day one, the academy lasts about 7.5 months. Between 7 to 7.5, depending on the size and what we're able to schedule. Field training is 6 months. 6 months. And it's divided over a series of phases. So the first phase is kind of a shadow phase. They just ride along. The second phase, they just handle what we call special response calls. So those are not like high priority calls. Generally, they're maybe like a break-in report with no suspects, no potential for arrests. And then it progresses up as we go. Oh, here's the specific numbers. Oh.
Okay, so for our current command structure, we have 17 captains, 55 lieutenants, 173 sergeants, and that's what our current numbers are at. That's not our budgeted numbers, but that's what our current numbers are.
Close, right? I've seen them from time to time, so yeah, go ahead.
And quick follow-up question, with the field training, how do you progress through it? Do you have to get approved to go to the next phase, or how does that work?
Perfect, and that's good. So right now what we have is a daily observation report where they're evaluated daily, and we have an end of week, right, evaluation. But in order to proceed to the next phase, we have an end of phase evaluation. And you have to be signed off on your FTO, your field training officer, and a supervisor to recommend you to progress to the next phase of it. Yep. Excellent questions.
Question. So you said daily evaluations. What does that look like? So what criteria? I'm just trying to, like, I'm a teacher, so I know we get evaluated. So I'm just trying to get an idea I couldn't imagine being evaluated daily as a teacher. So what does that look like? Is it just like, can you just elaborate a little
Yeah,
bit?
and I'll touch on it briefly. I mean, obviously, I don't have the form in front of me, but what we're looking at is, do they meet, exceed, or need improvement in those in certain areas that we have identified? And it could be uniform appearance, it could be utilizing technology, it could be interacting with the public, it could be completing maybe a death investigation, it could be generating written reports, it could be along those lines. And they're evaluated in that. And sometimes it's unobserved, right? So there is a kind of an unobserved thing because you're not going to get all of them all the time. But there is a series of them in the paperwork that, again, we could provide if you'd like to see it. But all of them I can't recall. I'm sorry.
And just a follow-up, so they're evaluated daily, is this for the entire police force or just a certain level?
This is only for probationary officers.
And who's
for like
evaluating
6
them?
months. The training officers
Okay.
that they're assigned to.
Okay, and their status on this list of command is what?
The field training officer?
Yes.
So they are just a patrol officer who's received additional training on training probationary officers, right? So they've attended 40 hours. So they don't carry a specific rank within the division. It's kind of a certification, almost like if I designated you as an academy instructor, that's what we're designating them as field training officers because they've attended additional training.
What's that additional training?
So it's 40 hours, or actually I'm going to turn this over to Lieutenant Smith to be accurate. It's currently 40 hours. We revamp in the program. Yeah. So it's a 40-hour training program where they go through leadership and evaluations and additional, what's that? Yeah, coaching, mentoring, these topics. And it's actually a program we're working on now, kind of adjusting, so.
Can we get a copy of the evaluation form?
Yeah, absolutely.
And my last question is, how long do you have to complete this 40 hours of training?
For the field training officer, how long do they have to complete it? So there are specific criteria you have to meet before you can even become that officer. And what we do is we schedule these training sessions kind of throughout the year. So we'll kind of put out what we call a divisional notice, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, soliciting members, right, who are interested in being field training officers. And in order to do that, they have to receive recommendations from their supervisors. They have to attend an interview process. There's a review of their disciplinary background and anything like that lines. And they actually come in and interview for it. And then we have what's called a field training coordinator and a field training committee that evaluates them and then will actually recommend them for the training. And then if they're recommended for the training, they attend it and they have to complete it there. If they don't complete it, then they won't receive the certification. Yep. Sure.
You mentioned that the training they have to repeat to requalify. How often does that occur?
It's every 3 years they have to recertify, every 3 years.
Thank you.
What percentage of officers who actually want to be a part of that program actually gets in?
I don't know if I could give you the specific total just off the top of my head. I'll probably use the prior list, right? So not everyone is accepted. There are individuals who are not selected, be it for disciplinary reasons, be it for the way they interviewed, the reasonings they're trying to support themselves as a training officer. So not everyone. What the percentage is, I couldn't say. Yeah. It was about 4 or 5, and we accepted, I think, yeah, and we accepted about 20. So, yeah, absolutely, Sean. Lieutenant Smith knows about that a little bit better than I do.
The board is selected from not just command staff. You have patrol officers from the CPPA. You have FOP involvement. You have different sections represented in that board that recommends or not recommend. So it's a process. Yes.
In addition to, people who just desire to be in this position, are there other incentives for officers? Do they receive a salary increase?
Yes, they receive an hour and a half when they're training. They receive an extra hour and a half of compensate. This overtime or comp time.
Compensatory time. They get it put on the books. Yep.
When they're training the officers?
Yes.
Okay. see.
And so you also have the supervisor there that oversees that training too. It goes through the training as well.
One other question. How many, what is the ratio of the training officer to the number of trainees that they're supervising at a given time?
1-to-1.
1-to-1, okay.
And they rotate each month to a different field training officer, so they get a different perspective, and you have somebody else that can evaluate them differently than somebody else. And we also have, if we have one of our FTOs that's having an issue with getting the probationary officer trained, we have somebody, we can have the ability to move them to somebody that's really good in that subject that they're having a problem with. And then we have the ability to bring them back to the academy to give them more training, to make sure, we do everything to make sure they succeed. So that's our goal.
So like last question. So there is no, is there a minimum of number of officers that they have to train with? Is there a range? It depends on the progress of the trainee?
It depends on how many FTOs we have, how many PPOs there are, and our current status right now, we don't have a lot of officers, so we have a lot of FTOs, and we try to put them with the best ones that's out there, especially if we find that somebody's struggling somewhere. We want that person, that FTO that really specializes maybe in report writing, to work with that PPO.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Do you know how many training officers are women?
No, I don't, but I can get you that info.
That'd be great, thank you.
I just wanted to know, so say I start 40 hours of training today. Is there a time frame under which if I don't complete that training that I have to restart? So if I don't finish it in 3 months or 6 months, do I get to bank the hours and I can do them over the course of a year and a half? Or do I need to complete them under a time
We have to
frame?
come back to the training once we start all over.
I think the question is, you want to know, they go for the whole week, 40 hours in a
Yeah,
week.
it's
So they're
for
there
the
for a
week.
whole week of training.
It's a week of training. If you miss, and I mean,
It's not piecemeal.
because we bring different instructors in that specialize throughout the division. We bring in different supervisors throughout the training that specialize in those topics. So it's kind of hard to start that in the middle. So they will have to come back.
Sorry, and did you mention the number of supervisor training, the number of officers that you have right now in the field training officers that qualify?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can get that for you.
Okay. But you're saying that it's insufficient to?
No, I didn't say it was insufficient. We actually have enough or more right now.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll say, I know this is probably a broad question, but you mentioned earlier that the 40-hour training is currently being revamped. How often do you review your trainings? What determines revamping? I'm just curious to know how that process works.
Well, we look at our training after every training cycle, and we review it. And then we have a training review committee that reviews training on certain increments. But we look at it every cycle. We do what we call an AAR to review our training and look at if any laws are changed or anything like that, or best practices. So that's what we do.
Yeah, so I just have a clarifying question, because earlier you said the field training was 6 months. Earlier you said the field training was 6 months, but then I heard you say 40 hours, so.
So the field training for a probationary officer is 6 months.
Okay.
To receive certification as a training officer is 40 hours.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great questions. Yeah, good input. Anything additional that we can help you with, either field training, the rank structure set up? Okay. Jason, if you don't mind, we'll advance through. So one of the things I want to do is just kind of introduce you to the CPD command staff, maybe talk about some of the commands. I may not have all of the answers, but we can at least kind of go through it. So I'll start with the chief and the deputy chiefs. And here you can see the pictures of them, and I'll talk, about the commands. And I talked about, Deputy Chief Todd, the chief of staff, the executive officer to the division, the number 2. My boss, right, over administrative operations is Deputy Chief Daniel Fay. Then we have Homeland Special Operations, we'll have Deputy Chief Harold Pertel. And then field operations, we have Deputy Chief Sammy Morris. So those are 4 deputy chiefs and the chief. Question, yeah.
Can you tell me what, excuse me, what each one of these deputy chiefs actually does?
Yes, so we're gonna move on, and then I will have the deputy chief with each respective commander next to him, and then we'll talk about those specific areas. Thank you. Yep. So here we have, Deputy Chief Dorothy Todd, the Chief of Staff, but commanders assigned over there. Right now, we have the Bureau of Compliance, who's Commander Brian Carney. He kind of oversees the Bureau of Compliance, policy, inspections, case prep, and the EEO. He, unfortunately, is not here, right? So that's why we have Lieutenant Hernandez to kind of answer any policy-related specific questions, similar to Lieutenant Smith. We have Commander Brandon Kutz, who's overseeing special projects and innovations. And then we also have an internal affairs superintendent. Sorry, I looked for pictures. I know there's one that exists of him, but it's Christopher Violent, who oversees our internal affairs unit. And Christopher Violent, right, is not what we consider a sworn position, a law enforcement position. We also have a vacancy currently of a police inspector general, but I wanted to put it on there just so you're aware the position does exist. Over administrative operations is Deputy Chief Daniel Fay. The Bureau of Technology and Property is Commander Carla Ellis. And this involves the property section, logistics, and the technology section, what we like to say the communication section, our dispatchers, our radio, our vehicle lots, our property units, falls under Commander Carla Ellis. The Bureau of Technology and Property. And then we have me right, over the Bureau of Support Services. And I talked about it, the Human Resource section, which is our personnel section, our professional education section, our training section, and then the record section, which does record management compliance. Homeland Special Operations is Deputy Chief Harold Patel. And in that chain of command, we have the Bureau of Special Investigations, which is Commander Ali Pillow. Under the units, right, the sections, so what we call, or the units under him, is the Special Investigation section, the Technical section, Sex Crimes and Child Abuse unit, the Domestic Violence section, and the Homicide section fall under his purview. For the Bureau of Homeland Services, we have Commander Ron Counts, and he has the Crime Awareness Response Evaluation section, the Airport section, and the Homeland Security section. And then we have the Bureau of Special Services, Commander Alfred Johnson, and under him is the Special Enforcement section, Task Force section, and the Tactical section. So that would be areas such as SWAT that would fall under those. And then we have field operations, and that's Deputy Chief Sammy Morris, and these are the commanders of the 5 districts and our traffic commissioner. So over the 1st district, we have Commander Jared Schlott. The 2nd district, we have Commander Thomas Stocco. The 3rd district, we have Commander Rob Tucker. The 4th district, we have Commander Mo Brown. The 5th district is Commander Johnny Johnson. And then Commissioner Gordon Holmes is over our traffic unit, or our traffic bureau. Sure, question.
I'm just looking at these various areas of responsibility for each. So Commander Ali Pillow seems to have, I mean, from a layman's perspective, is dealing with an awful lot. How many people on average will work on? I mean that's major as a consumer. As a consumer, that's major.
Yeah, I'll turn that over to DC Todd.
So just to go into a little background about that, he oversees those operations, and underneath there are captains and lieutenants who are the immediate supervisors. So when you're comparing that, the highest amount of people that have the members underneath them are commanders, district commanders. So when you're talking about a district like the 3rd district over here, prior to my current position, I was the 3rd district commander. When I first started there, I had 250 members assigned to me to that district. So with current staffing, I think they're around 194. So that's, or I'm sorry, they might be a little lower than that, but those are the commanders that have the highest number of personnel underneath them. When you're talking about these investigative units, between all of those sections there may be 80. So it sounds like a lot, but those are investigative units, so it's really not the same amount of personnel. The district commanders have the bulk of personnel who work for them. Does that make a little sense?
Yes, it's just those areas.
Those are very, but if you, those are all the highest crime victim units, you know, and that's the biggest. It's to have those operations, they all work together. So having those under one command is the best structure for that.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
Just real quickly, about how many police officers is it total in the force?
Right now,
Total.
our
Test.
1,300 is a good.
Test.
I was at a meeting last night.
Okay.
Just
Question over here.
So, how long can, one of your staff be in a skilled position before they actually become that title?
As in, I guess,
So for
3 years to be a sergeant. Yeah, I think it's what she's asking about.
Right, you're actually right, that's something, but you're serving in a higher capacity. How long before you actually become
Okay.
that higher capacity?
So, so I'll kind of explain, in order to be promoted to a sergeant, you have to be an officer for 3 years before you're eligible. And then beyond that, you have to be in each rank 1 year before you're eligible to move into the next rank, to take an exam for it. Now, if you're assigned into something like what we call as detail, it depends, right? Because there are some contractual things, or essentially if you're placed into an assignment temporarily, there is no finite deadline for all of the positions of when you would assume that position, if that makes sense, I guess. So each one kind of has its own consideration. Sure.
Could you tell me how are the officers, the number of officers allotted per district? What are the considerations? I'm assuming they're not evenly distributed.
So that would kind of fall more to field operations or Deputy Chief Todd. I'll let her explain.
So the district staffing is based on crime stats and calls for service. So that's a lot of how we deploy our men and women. So we will look at the amount of calls that come into each district and the crime volume that's in that district, and that's how it's determined the staffing for each district.
Just a follow-up, do they move quite often between the districts? If there's if there's a crime surge, will they move between districts to fill that?
No. Okay, so once an officer is assigned to a district, the only way they move from there is if they request to. They can type to move to another district if they decided they want to move to another operation. I think it's only been once when we went from 6 police districts to 5 that people were deployed throughout the districts. They closed one district down, and all of those resources were deployed to one of the 5 districts. So we don't normally move our staffing unless it's a request that they move to somewhere else, whether it be a different unit, a different operation, or a different district.
Thank you.
Commander, do you say your last name Maguth?
Maguth.
Maguth? Okay, I wanted to make sure I was saying it right. But Commander Maguth, I was just kind of curious, like what your vision has been in your position, and how, like, what has been, like, what have you been hoping to do as over this division? Yeah.
Well, it's a big interview question.
I'm just curious.
No, I'm teasing. You know what? Honestly, so one of the fortunate things is I get to bring a little bit of an academic and a practical research, right? I have a doctorate in criminal justice. I'm a police officer. I'm also a paramedic, right? I've been with public safety. I'm a Cleveland John Marshall graduate, right? So I get to bring some of these into the mix, and my vision is we are able to provide some of the best, most professional training you will see, right? And that's on the training section. But the personnel section, right? I want to make sure that we are doing thorough, detailed background investigations. We are processing benefits appropriately. Records. We are maintaining appropriate, sunshine state law when we're giving requests under public records. So those are some of the things that I want us to do, and we are, right? We are doing such a good job. But I think that's one of the things is I just want to make sure I'm supporting the 21st professional policing, that I also am really doing a good job, but that's kind of my goal, right? That's what we all want to do. No one wants to do a poor job. So I guess that's kind of what I aim for. So if, unrelated to command structure, right? But, so.
I just wanted to ask 2 questions. One, if we can get the actual numbers for how many you have per district, and if you could maybe provide that over as long of a period of time as you have in your records. And then my other question was, I noticed that you told us, or we were told by someone, I just can't remember exactly, there are 17 captains. So if you look at the commander positions, so Commissioner Ridgway's question was about sort of how does one person manage such a wide range of like issues. So is the fact that there's 17 captains and 17 bullet points under the commanders, is that just by coincidence or is that by design? Is there a policy in the police force that states that the commanders and like something like a special investigation section, a sex crime and child abuse unit, is there something in your organization that states that those must be led by a captain, or is that 17 and 17 just a coincidence?
So I don't want to of a coincidence, possibly, but we do kind of operate under a span of control. So we know that one supervisor can effectively manage X amount depending on the task at hand. So that is a consideration when we talk about which supervisors or captains or lieutenants are going to be assigned where.
But these do not define captain roles, just so you understand.
Correct.
That. Just because there's these sections, most of those are lieutenants' positions.
Correct.
So this is just so you're understanding, these are not captain's roles that are designated under here. So that's just so when you're looking at like this special, and I'll just say sex crime and child abuse, that is overseen by a lieutenant, and then he has sergeants underneath him. So our span and control is usually to have 8 officers to 1 sergeant, between 7 and 8 officers to 1 sergeant, whether that be in a unit or in patrol. So that, and then up from there, the lieutenants oversee the duties of the sergeant, and then the captains oversee that, and so on and so forth, if that makes sense. So it's usually the sergeants are the frontline supervisors, whether that be in an investigative unit or in the patrol section. And they usually have 7 to 8 members underneath them that they oversee.
So just to clarify, these categories under the commanders that Commissioner Ridgway just picked out, Bureau of Special Investigations, these topics, or I don't know what you call them, could be led by a captain or a lieutenant or a sergeant?
No, so they're not by sergeants. They're at least ran by a lieutenant.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood properly.
And these are the units that are broken down. So those sections underneath are the units. So they have those, for like Commander Pillow, he has those 5 designated units that are underneath him.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I didn't make it as clear as I probably should have on the paper, but that's why we're here, right? To help explain some of it. Go ahead.
Commander McGuth, 2 questions. To backtrack about how the officers are deployed per district, it was based on crime stats. Is that a straight, like how many calls and then how many officers, or are certain crimes get, prorated more importance, and is there like a more complex calculation there?
Again, I don't really want to speak to that because I don't do those calculations. Now, I will say just from my general is Part 1 violent crimes is what they're operating off of.
And then our Part 1 violent crimes are your homicides, your felonious assault shootings, your aggravated burglaries, all of those high crime Part 1 violent crimes that are, that's what those are based off of.
Okay. And for you, Commander
Sure.
Magooth, could you explain the structure of the records section a little bit, how many people are responding? And could you also tell me how long the wait is for a civilian to request records and also for an entity like OPS for their investigations has been?
So the request through OPS, I can't really, I don't know. So I don't want to kind of give a time frame. But we do allow online public records requests and in-person record requests as well. We're open to the public Monday, Wednesday, Friday for normal business hours to come in and request records. Assigned there, it's a 24/7 operation for the sake of the internal operations, right? So public for records requests is just the regular business hours. Assigned there, and forgive me, we have about 6 sergeants who kind of maintain the record file unit. We also, a part of that, we have a public records unit, which is ran by a manager. And there's roughly 7 principal clerks that work for her. We also have our leads TAC, and that's the one. So since we use leads and we enter into NCIC, there's standards we have to maintain. And this supervisor is kind of in charge of making sure we're meeting those standards. So we have that unit that's assigned as a part of the record section. And we also have a technology integration unit. So if we want to adopt new technology or we use our reporting system, they are in charge of maintaining that system.
So thank you. So what is, I know it depends on the complexity of the record request, but what has been the average time
So
that a citizen
I will say that we have drastically cut down the return for public records requests. The specific time I wish I could give you, but I want to say it's 3 to 4 days. But I can get you the specific, right? It's generally pretty quick. And if you do an in-person show up, we generally can get you a copy of a report or whatever you're looking for if we have it available that day. We do charge a small price. I think it's 5 cents per page. So somewhere around there.
Thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome.
So, looking on this, do you have any special units that deal specifically with youth?
With youth-specific units?
Or special needs or...
Yeah, so we actually have Acting Commander Arnell Rose here, who kind of works with Community Relations Unit. Arnell, you want to step up and help out?
I'm thinking more so of like when a crime has been committed and it involves youth.
Okay.
What unit is that ever like a special set of officers are going to be dispatched to deal with youth that are like juveniles who are committing?
So we don't. We do have crisis intervention trained officers who kind of receive a little bit additional training. We do have a policy that focuses on interaction with youth. Chief, the courts have the program, and then the courts, I guess, provide the program. So I wasn't aware of that.
So are you guys the same officers that might be dispatched to a local high school in addition to like the CMSD police? It's just, it could be anyone within that district?
It could, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. Hi.
Are there, I'm assuming there are officers that have received special training to deal with the mentally distressed and affected. How many officers have received that training? Is there a unit that deals with, and how are they dispatched, when they're available, or are there times that there's not enough sufficient officers to deal with a call like that?
No, great question. So we do have what is called a co-responder program, where we actually have a specially certified individual in crisis intervention training that responds with a licensed social worker to do follow-up for mental health individuals. And if they are available, they will actually respond and actually assist with it, which we've actually had kind of happen successfully. And we're actually using one of the encounters in a training we're doing, right? So we do have that, and we do have these specially trained officers who would respond to those calls, those type of calls.
So I mean, just a rough guess, how many times have they not been available for calls that were by the dispatcher known to be?
That I
Mental health
wouldn't
nature.
be able to. Sure.
I'll just talk first a little bit on the crisis response team, which he's referring to. So currently, we have one team assigned to each district. They work a 10-hour shift right now, so they start at noon normally. So they're not a lot of times available, during the early mornings or in the evenings. But to supplement that, we also have officers who are assigned to patrol that have they have specialized crisis intervention training. I hope that helps a little bit. They start at, noon to 10 at night.
What is considered crisis intervention training?
So the crisis intervention training that was taken, we had two different crisis intervention trainings. We had one 40-hour course that was conducted that started several years ago, 15 years ago at least. And that was a 40-hour course that was put on by the Adams Board. And that course consisted of social workers, there were site visits, it was all put on by non-police personnel. And then there is specialized crisis intervention training, which is another specialized course that's also put on by the Adams Board. And it's also put on by the social workers again, and the officers get the specialized crisis intervention training. Now that course itself is voluntary, so those officers who are specialized crisis intervention trained, it's voluntary for them to be a part of that training, and when they are working, they're volunteering that they will take those calls for service. So we have a lot of officers who have the basic training, the majority of our department does, but the specialized, I don't have the exact numbers, that's on the voluntary basis.
Also, are you saying that the majority of officers in the field have taken the CIT then?
The basic training, yes.
Yeah,
ma'am.
the 40-hour training.
Yes.
Okay.
They also received 36 hours in the police academy, 36 hours of crisis intervention training.
I was under the impression that the basic training was 8 hours and the specialized training on the consent was 40 hours. Am I incorrect?
Those are the refreshers.
Okay.
Yeah, so when we first received tasers to the Division of Police, part of receiving the tasers was you had to take the CIT course. So that came with it. So if you had a taser, you had to be CIT trained. So most of our department does have that first initial training of the 40 hours.
An increased specialization in CIT is part of the consent decree, right?
Yes, the specialized CIT officer, yes.
So, I actually just left a meeting at the Adams Board, and it looks like, please help me if this is not correct, it looked like the co-responder program is due to end June, like 30th of this year. Is that true?
We're actually looking at expanding it. Yeah, we're going to be expanding the program. We just had funding under the ARPA fund to add more co-responders. And also, more of the social workers that work with them.
And where does care response fall in the scheme of things?
So care response is not going to be under the Division of Police. It's going to be under the Health Department. I believe is who are going to oversee that. They're the ones looking at that program right now.
Excuse me, Commissioner Wall. The last page of the handout is for questions. I would ask that you write your questions down so we can get through this training and ask them then, because we could be here on this section forever. Thank you, I'd appreciate it.
I have nothing to do, so my my evening's open, right? We're here till 1? Is that what it is? Okay. Any other question?
Sorry, the audience has a question.
Oh, yeah, you know, Commissioner, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
For the recording purpose. Now, the question for the community is, based on the current model, if right now there's a CIT trained, specializedly trained, or somebody with a social work working background to come up with a real officer who may not be trained with advanced specialized training. Now, two people go to handle the situation. Who's listen to whom?
Would you like me to answer?
Yes, please.
So that's actually in the works, and we're discussing that. But right now, it will be the specially trained individual who would take essentially the control of that scene. And one of the things we're in discussions is actually with supervisors, right? This specialized certified individual has received additional training, and they will take the priority of that scene. Okay, so, thank you. All right. Anything additional? We'll move on. Okay, Jason, if you push us forward. This is our organizational chart. We've talked a lot about how it falls and who's in charge of it. So I'll pause in case there's any questions related to this. I know it kind of looks chaotic, but it's really not once you kind of go through it. But there is a... so I'll pause for a second because I know we have to talk about policy as well. Any questions on this? If there is, right, this isn't the only day you can get information from us, I promise, right? You can forward questions, through Jason does, however you want to go about it. I know Dr. Anderson comes in. I do. We have our contact information. I have cards I'll give everyone before I leave as well.
And then when referencing this, just go back to that other page with the rank and structure. And then I know he's not here right now, but that'll give a better idea of where the captains fall to the lieutenants. That gives a bit of a better idea for that, so you understand how the units are broken down.
Yeah, sorry, I only had so much room to work with. But you can see, the professional education section has the academy unit, the gymnasium unit, and the firearms training unit, right? So those fall under those categories. I just kind of kept it simple. But if there is any questions, anything you come up with, please feel free to forward it over. Otherwise, I'll move on. And one of the things I just wanted to talk about just briefly, right, is kind of just talk about what does a district look like. And essentially, these are kind of the way it's structured, right? So we have our commander's office. Out of there, you have community engagement officers. You have the district traffic enforcement, district training coordinators, and support staff that works out of the commander's office. From there, kind of think about breaking it into two areas. So you have a support section and you have a patrol section. In that support section, you have your detective unit, your vice unit, you have the community service unit, violent crime response teams. So those are kind of function out of the support area. In your patrol section, you have 3 platoons. Platoons are a fancy name we use for shifts. So I put the hours on there to kind of try to explain them. These are just some terms you're going to hear maybe or see it written down. I just kind of wanted to point to it. If there's any other terms you see or you don't understand, please feel free to send them our way and we'll help clarify them. But when we talk about a platoon, we're really just talking about start times of shifts between 6 to 9 a.m. Okay, and that's how each one of those platoons. One of the weirdest things to get used to is when we talk about vacation days, those are just our regularly scheduled days off. Our vacation, right, is called furlough. So we go on furlough, which is vacation, right? So just so you're aware, I figured I'd throw a couple terms in there so you can understand it. Okay. Any questions or anything on that? All right. And then again, here are those specialized units that we talked about. They're in the structure, but here they kind of are just listed out in linear fashion for you to take a look at. Okay. And that was more just for you to reference. I just want to provide it to you as a reference source. Sure.
Really quick, just to clarify for myself, but the platoon times that are listed, these are start times. So like for A, it could be between 6 and 9.
Correct.
Okay.
Between that hours. Okay. So really, right now, the start times are 7 and 8 a.m. But that's the range they can start. And right now, A platoon is 8 hours, and then B and C are 10 hours.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yep. Good question. And then Jason, we can move on. Sure. Yeah, if you have a question, go ahead. Yep. Moving on doesn't end questions, I promise. Go ahead.
On this list of specialized units, what is the NICE unit, NICE, and what is the TAC?
Perfect. The NICE is our Neighborhood Impact Community Engagement Team. Thank you. That's their function. So they work under our field operations. And then the TAC is, remember I talked about, I wish I could tell you what TAC stands for. I'm still trying to find out. But that's our Leads Compliance Supervisor. That's the individual who's responsible for making sure we are in compliance when it comes to leads. The law enforcement automated, I'm not even going to try, right?
Okay, so the other part of this question is there a unit within our police department that would be comparable to the unit that engaged with Tyree, Nichols, and Memphis?
With the squirt, I don't believe, she was asking if there's a comparable unit to what Memphis, I believe, right? It was Memphis, had the Scorpion unit.
Gang Impact.
To my knowledge, we don't have a unit that does that, because I believe I don't know the true purpose of that unit, but I remember reading about it, and we didn't have anything that fit that, so.
We do have proactive units that go out for gang enforcement and for large drug activities. And that's when you see like our gang impact unit. And we have our narcotics unit, which is the more high profile, larger amount drug investigations. The NICE unit, they basically oversee complaints in neighborhoods, also domestic violent warrant pickups is a lot of what they do. They work with the domestic violence unit for those pickups. And the TAC is the terminal. I just had it a second ago. It's just basically, like he said, it's a leads coordinator. So a Scorpion unit, I don't know exactly what, like Commander Magoo said, I don't know what all of their function were, but we don't have that type of, response like that. We have our gang investigation unit.
You probably will have to get us this information, but about how many officers are in each unit? And are there officers that can be assigned to more than one unit?
So the only way an officer can be assigned to more than one unit, I'll answer that first, is we have like our bicycle unit, and that's not a permanent unit. So that's only used during special events or if we had some type of, larger event that would require that. Also the harbor unit, which is the boats. That's another on-call unit. Our crisis negotiators are on-call units. So that's the only time they can be used in multiple units. Those officers have basic functions that they do on a normal basis. And what was I'm sorry, I forgot the first part of the question.
How many officers are assigned to each one of these units?
So it varies. Like our gang impact unit, I believe, has in the 30 to 40 range. Some of that is federally funded, which we have certain requirements of the staffing there. Our investigative units, each one, they're not all comparably the same numbers. I think our domestic violence unit currently has 8 or 9 detectives.
How do you determine that? Is it by funding? Is it by need?
A lot of it's by need and a lot of it's by our staffing.
Okay.
So we have to balance with the current officers we have. And you have to look at patrol as the primary function of the division. Those are our frontline officers who go out and answer the calls for service. So they're the priority for our staffing. And then everything else, we have to staff based on what we have.
Can you tell us where, which unit processes rape kits?
The sex crimes unit.
That would be our sex crimes child abuse
They
unit.
don't process the rape kits. Those are actually turned over for processing, but they're the ones who they investigate the sexual assault crimes.
Do you know about how many people are assigned to that?
I can tell you in 2 seconds. If you
That would be great, thank you.
Yes.
I was wondering what the gym unit and hit skip unit are.
So hit skip is when, unfortunately, someone hits your car and drives away. It's called a hit skip, right? So the unit investigates that. And then the gymnasium unit is the one who teaches our subject control, physical conditioning, impact weapons, and taser.
Hit skip sounds so much nicer than hit and run, doesn't it?
And also, just to clarify, so the sex crimes and child abuse unit is one unit, is that right?
Correct.
It's one, okay.
Correct. Any other questions on it? Sure.
Kind of related to Commissioner Kennedy's question, do the crime labs report to, are they under y'all's structure or are they under a different division?
Who is that? I'm sorry.
Oh, crime labs?
The crime lab?
Yeah.
Yeah, they fall under the Bureau of Special Investigations. That's where they would fall.
And that's where I believe the rape kits are processed, correct?
Well,
through the
no,
state crime labs.
we actually
Okay,
send
yeah.
those out to be processed through, yeah, I don't want to give the wrong, but it's the state of Ohio.
Yeah,
I believe,
the
yes.
State crime labs, yeah.
Currently, we have 18 members, detectives assigned to sex crimes, child abuse.
And they all work on both sex crimes and child abuse, or are they split up at all?
To be honest, I don't know if they have them specialized, but normally they would work under both.
Okay, so 18 for those. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Going once? Okay, Jason, we can advance. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk about policy. We're switching gears, all right? So we're changing a little bit from the command structure, and we're going to talk about some of our written directives. And luckily, I have Lieutenant Hernandez, who, if we have questions, I'll bring her up, who can help with this. I don't want to say this is my weakest area, but we'll work together on this, right? I promise you. So what we operate off of is general police orders. So have you been provided them? Have you seen them? It's a big book, right? Do you have them in electronic form or in paper? Oh, okay, those are golden. Save those, right? Some aspiring promotee will buy them from you. But you can see it's a lot of information. It covers a lot of areas, right? Those are the things that essentially is the foundation of our division, right? We generate a general police order that provides us the guidance that we need to accomplish various tasks depending on what it is kind of directing us. So we'll look at it, and I kind of wanted to just talk about, well, how does a general police order come to be, right? And these are some of the things that are considered. So input from subject matter experts. There's research done to look at law and best practices, and this best practices span, the country, right? This isn't isolated. We look at other comparable agencies and communities and take their policies, right, and kind of use those as considerations. They're drafted through the Bureau of Compliance. That was Commander Carney, our policy unit. They're generally reviewed through the city law department. And then they're routed through the chief where, that's where the ultimate approval comes through, where he'll sign the policy. And I'll talk about the training that's associated with that when it occurs. So that's a general police order, that really big book. Divisional notices are short-term directives, and these directives are essentially something we need to get out immediately and quick, right? General police orders are essentially take a long time to revise and to solidify, where divisional notices are these short-term directives to maybe provide guidance or input or I'll use training. If I'm going to change the location of training, I would issue a divisional notice to let everybody in the division know that we're doing that. Okay, and that's what kind of some of the things divisional notices would be used for.
Have you gotten rid of the rules and regulations?
No, the manual rules and regs still stand. So
I thought maybe they were absorbed by the GPOs or something at this point.
They're not. Nope, that's a whole separate book I was going to talk about. Yep.
Okay.
So there's, civil service manual of rules, I believe, the manual rules and regulations, and then obviously we have.
And the manual rules superseded the general police orders? That's how it used to be?
It still is unchanged. Yep, okay. It's unchanged. Correct. Any other questions on that before I move forward? Good questions. Yep.
Where are the manual rules and regulations, and is that something that we could have a copy of?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because that still supersedes GPOs.
Yes, we can provide you the manual rules regulations. Absolutely.
And the civil service laws as well?
Yes.
And those And what is that, I guess, the hierarchy? So what supersedes what in all
civil service
three?
rules are handled, is civil service, right? That's kind of how it is. The manual rules is kind of the manual rules that we have to follow. And maybe if I had them and showed you and we could talk it out, it'd probably make a little bit more sense.
Okay.
But I agree, the manual rules supersedes our general police, or that is what we are held to. But they kind of serve two different purposes, in essence. The manual rules provides guidance, but it's not as detailed as what we're going to get from a general police order.
Okay.
The general police order will generally take you through a more detailed steps in order to be in compliance of that. But the manual rules may be like don't steal or something, So,
Okay.
to help
So it's
with an
vague.
example.
Got
Yep.
it.
I was going to ask what happens if there's something that comes out in the divisional notices or the unit manuals or the book of rules. What happens when if those conflict with the GPO or vice versa?
So we'll talk about how general police orders can be revised, and then they actually are. There is a schedule to review general police orders to update them. So, and that is the intent, right? So say a divisional notice puts out something that may affect a general police order. In the future, when that general police order is revised, that divisional notice's change will be incorporated into that general police order.
And there are times as well that we do rescind a general police order if it's no longer, it's something that we do not follow or will not follow. We will rescind it until something new is rewritten.
And then is there kind of like a hierarchy of which ones you follow first if there is a conflict?
Well, general police orders is what we're going to follow off of. But if the DN changes it, yeah,
They're the same in some port. They're all the same. It's just like when you see the manual rules, you'll see it's a smaller book, and it's very small compared to what our general police orders looks like.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I've just seen
Sure,
some,
go
when I reviewed the general police orders, there are some that have been crossed through.
Mm-hmm.
Those are ones that have been updated or deleted or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So I know you kind of mentioned this, but just a little bit further, around how long does it take to revise, change, or even adopt just a brand new general police order?
So it depends, right? It depends. Yeah, I'll let Lieutenant Hernandez explain because she probably has the best experience with it.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about just a regular policy, because we have consent decree related policies that we had to create or revise, and then we have our initial policies. So, and we operate under all of them, obviously, but sometimes an old, outdated policy will need to reach out to the units, the subject matter experts in that. Say it's an OVI, we want to talk with the traffic unit. We want to get all of those changes right because so then there's a lot of review back and forth, a lot of input from different units, from patrol officers, from law. I mean, everything is incorporated. So it's kind of a back and forth. So it can take a little while. When we talk about updating, revising policies that relate to the consent decree, we work with the monitoring team and the DOJ and the CPC, and we go back and forth and we incorporate all the feedback. Well, not all the feedback, but we research all feedback. We look into everything. We look into law. We make sure it works for the division. So that's a lot of back and forth. So it can take a little while. There's no set amount of time, though, that it will take.
I just want to make sure that I didn't mishear anything. So I read subject matter experts in a particular way. So are you saying that the subject matter experts are within the police?
Sometimes.
The CDP, or are we talking about maybe people that do research or academics? I just want to be clear about when you say
It could be both, actually.
Okay.
Yes, it could be
What's typical? Like if you look at the history of who you have consulted as subject matter experts, do they tend to be people from CDP within that have experience, or do they tend to be people who have actual like research, policy, academic training? What's the norm?
Yeah, I will. That's a very difficult question to say the norm, because with the previous commission, our search and seizure policies, there was a whole committee that was with us and worked with the division to revise those policies. So it was a lot of back and forth. We had meetings, we sat down and thoroughly went through those policies to adjust them.
How many of those people on that committee, how many people in that process would have been outside of CDP? In that particular example that you just mentioned, how many people were outside of the CDP?
I believe it was a group of about 8 people or so.
And what was the total amount of people that were included in that group?
Well, you mean including the division?
Get to how many people is CDP consulting outside of themselves as they're making these decisions about what the best practices or approaches are for these general orders?
Well, it depends on what the policy is, because some of the stuff we will have to go through the law department. Some of it will have to be researched like that. And, you know, we have other policies that really don't require that.
So just for clarity for the commission, can we also put in a request for documentation about sort of what the breakdown is of who's internal and who's external as you are deciding on these general police orders?
Okay.
I think there's just a little confusion on this. A lot of these policies have existed for decades. And what happens is the policies have been there and they get revamped over the years based on laws, changes in Ohio laws, change in laws across the United States. And we don't just say this is a policy we want for our division. It's researched from other agencies. It's researched through the law department. And if you look at our policies, some of them are as simple as grooming standards. And some of them are as complex as arrest procedures. When you talk about arrest procedures, those are not laws that we make up. Those are federal guidelines that are followed. So it depends on the subject matter for each policy. It's not that we're just creating our own rules. They're created based on what's happening in every other department and what are the federal guidelines, state guidelines, and city guidelines. Does that make a little more sense? It's not like we just came.
I understand. I guess I'm just requesting to know what you're using to make these decisions. I mean, you're explaining it. I just would like to see names and backgrounds and titles. Just
well, a lot of these policies,
the more information, the better.
If you look on the top of them, they have dates that they were issued or revised. So you'll see some that have been around for 20 years. Some have been around for 5 years. And on average, we don't come up with policies regularly. We don't change policies like every week we have a new policy or change in a policy. Those take a long time. And then everything we have as far as our general police orders with consent decree related have to be approved through the judge before we can even enact those. So it's most of our policies, any changes we have are going through the monitors to have them have an input in those. I hope, we just don't create policies.
Chief, I think when something comes up, you'll get experts from other departments to consult with. Might be somebody from Case Western with search and seizure, whatever you need to do. You'll go outside
And
to
there's
get the best, to
also,
follow the best practices and everything like that.
There's also software that's out there. There's companies that are out there that they look at, our policy unit looks at, that are available to all divisions. We're looking at best practices for everything. So we not only we'll have other agencies come to us and ask about a particular policy that we've written, and they'll say, I'd like to see your policy on vehicle pursuits. That's one we get on a regular basis because we have a lot of roles involved in that. And they will take and they will put their spin on it for their own agency to make it sure it's in compliance with their local laws. And it's the same thing with us. We gather the information from agencies across the United States, and we do our research internally, and that's what the policy's based off of. It's not just, it's very time consuming. Policies take months, up to sometimes years to complete.
I understand that doesn't matter of my request, but I want to try one more time. Can we please hold the questions till the question period arrives? We are here for training. We're here for. Just write them down and get back to them. But let's get through this training, please. Thank you.
We're moving on. Sorry, no more questions. No, we'll get you the info, right? And luckily I have them because they can bring a good perspective. Otherwise I'd stare at everyone. So we did talk about these, and at the end we'll have the questions, and let us hear them, and we'll get you the best answers we can, right? If we can't, we'll get that information back to you. So we talked about the divisional notices, unit manuals. So each unit has a manual to show its operation. This is kind of the how-to guide of that unit. So if I'm a part of the timekeeping unit, there are things I need to know. There's systems I'm going to use. There's steps I got to take. I got to carry envelope A to area B every day, or and that's just a vague. We don't have those. But it's guiding you through your day-to-day operations, right? And that's what the unit manuals help those units do. So. Jason, we'll move on. Thank you. So our division has access to these written directives or forms or any of these through these means. So we have SharePoint. So we operate SharePoint where we can access it and we can actually obtain or look up any one of these general police orders or divisional notices. I think they go back to 2015 divisional notices or somewhere on there. So it's stored, right? Each of these divisional notices that you can go back and reference if you need to. In addition to that, an email is sent out to all division members anytime one of these directives are signed and enacted. It gets sent out to all division employees. We talked about the training aspect of it. So when we change a general police order, a lot of work went into it, and sometimes it involves a lot of detail. And but it depends, right? So use of force, when we changed and updated our general police orders of use of force, that's a very high liability, high critical area that we want people to be proficient and demonstrate it and understand it and get questions. So we do in-person training, right? We may supplement the actual reading of the policies. We'll preload it through an online learning system that we have, just so we know they read it, they acknowledge they read it. We give them maybe written a quiz just to make sure they have knowledge and understanding of that policy. But then we bring them into the academy and we actually do hands-on practical training. Where we can actually evaluate and assess and then remediate if necessary. And that's kind of how we've looked at, some of those areas such as use of force, search and seizure, bring them in and actually provide them the scenario-based opportunities to practice these policies. So we have the in-person and we have the learning management system. Now, if it's a general police order that is maybe to uniform, right? I don't need to bring you in and train you, where your badge should go on your shirt. So we may just provide that strictly through our learning management system with what we just talked about, where we're gonna give you the policy, we're gonna make them acknowledge that they read it, and the system forces us to make them open that. I can't force anyone to read it, but I can make sure they check off that they acknowledge they read it, and then we give them a quiz based off of that. And that's kind of how we've been administering changes to these written directives. Here are new or revised policies since the consent decree, right? So this is a list of them that we provided for you to look at. These are just some of them that we've worked on, right? And we can go to the next one if you want, Jason, unless anyone has any questions. Well, sorry, we're moving on, Jason. We're moving on. I know, it's so hard. It's so hard to get out of that mindset. It's like teaching. I want to clarify before we go on. These are ones currently being reviewed, right? So we have the officer intervention, performance management, policy in the manual, and the pursuit investigation team. So those are the 3 currently being revised. We can move on to the next. And here is, so there's a process of revision to these. So yearly, a yearly revision schedule is provided to the CPC historically. And input is provided into that. The division evaluates that and incorporates that. Now, say we can't, right? Say it's a safety issue. Some things we just can't do because it could be harmful or concerning. An explanation would be drafted and provided back. Okay, and historically that's been the practice. I just thought it was important we at least gave that to you. So, this is our contact information. I have my card. I will make sure that I give it to everyone before we leave. But if you want a picture of it, or it should be in your slide. But it's my information. It's Commander Brian Carney, who's over the compliance unit. That's also Lieutenant Sean Smith, who's over the training section. So he's been very integrated in a lot of the training. He understands it. And then Captain Rob Simon, who also has been involved in a lot of the consent decree compliance dealings of the division. At this time, that completes our presentation. And and we're open for questions. Where am I going first? Okay.
So I have a question. Going back to the consent, I have questions about the policies of consent decree. So first, this one right here that says domestic violence incidents involving CDP officers. Okay. What exactly does that mean? And then how many incidents have there been involving domestic violence with CDP officers? So
it means what it means. It is members of the division who are involved in a domestic violence
in their personal lives.
In their personal lives. The number, I don't have that. I could look into it to see if we can provide it, but.
So just so you have an understanding, if a member of the Division of Police or any law enforcement is convicted of any type of domestic violence crime, they immediately are terminated. You cannot carry a firearm or own a firearm if you have a domestic violence conviction or any type of stalking conviction.
So is this for officers that have been convicted, or like for some?
No. So the policy is involved if, especially if you live in the city of Cleveland, if there's a call for a husband and wife fighting and one of those members is a police officer, we have standards and we have policies on how that call is handled, because we have to investigate it with we have to have an unbiased investigation. Our internal affairs unit comes out just to make sure, because sometimes the officers are the victim, sometimes there's a suspect, and sometimes it might be an accusation that's not factual. So there's still a due process that they're entitled to, but there are still standards that if there's an accusation of domestic violence or an arrest made in domestic violence, there's policies that we have in place for that.
And are we allowed to get those rough numbers of how many officers have been involved in that?
We don't track it. We don't track it like that. We have internal affairs investigations, so we don't have a tracking system that says that these are all domestic violence related. We have a tracking software for our internal affairs investigations, and those could be for various reasons. It could be, we don't track it specifically to just domestic violence. Because so we have what we call IA Pro, which is where our database is for all of our investigations, and each section, including internal affairs, it's tracked by the member, not by the crime.
As a follow-up, are there other crimes that would, of conviction that would automatically terminate an officer other than domestic violence?
Anything felony related and stalking.
Thank you.
Question?
What percentage of revised GPO or directives are the direct result of the consent decree to date?
Lieutenant, I don't have that answer, maybe.
Most of the ones that were up on the screen are the ones that were
I
revised.
thought so. I just wanted to.
Yeah, in
know that
relation
for
to the
sure.
consent decree.
And do you know what percentage of those were actually initiated by the previous commission?
Initiated by it, or
That it might have come to the police department from the previous commission saying this needs to be revised or updated or amended.
I don't know the exact number, but there are a few on their interaction with youth, interaction with gender nonconforming. Yeah, I'd have to see.
Sorry. Are they gonna help out? One more? There we go. Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, so most of these policies are required through the consent decree to look at and revise, but there are a few in here, like interactions with youth, interactions with transgender, intersex, and gender nonconforming individuals. That's something we worked with the CPC, the previous CPC, on also.
How many areas of the consent decree have there not been policies made but need to be made?
Well, those 3 that we were talking about, if you go, can you go forward, Jason? These are, the 2 at the top there, those are 2 big parts of the consent decree that we're currently working on, those policies, currently being revised.
And the pursuit is high-speed chase?
Pursuit investigation team, that would be like the team that came out and investigated.
The pursuit policy was already rewritten.
Yeah.
It's just the follow-up to any pursuits, the investigation portion.
Yes. Okay.
So going forward, when policies are written with GPOs, will the commission, these commissioners sitting here, will they be a part of the review? Will they be part of the process?
I believe.
So again, this is our introduction meeting.
Yeah.
We're trying to get to know each other and find out what our next steps are. So first date. Yep.
So I believe if I am referencing my insignia chart correctly, it would be Lieutenant Hernandez. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
See, I've been paying attention. I was wondering if we could get your contact information as well.
Sure. It's J. Hernandez. At clevelandohio.gov.
Great.
And it's 216-623-5509.
Awesome. And then my question for all of you or whoever feels so called to respond is I would love to know what you guys are hoping to get out of working with us. Or, I think I like the first date analogy. I understand that this is our first meeting, but, I just would be curious what you're hoping to see us be able to accomplish together.
I think just from, like I said, working with the previous commission on the search and seizure policies, a lot of that input was beneficial, and to see what the community is thinking about our policies and the way that we can provide police feedback to form a better understanding between why our policies are the way that they are, or if there's something in there that's confusing, that we can communicate with each other and talk about those things so we can both understand where the perspective we're coming from.
Basically the same thing, except we work together to solve problems. That's basically that we are one team, not us and you. We're all one team to work together. And that's why we're giving you a contact number. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. That's what we're here for.
And as in my position, I truly look forward to working with each and every one of you. I think that the division is not, they want to be you to be a part of us. You know, we want to hear the community input. We want to do what's best practices, but we also want you to understand who we are. And it might be, you know, helpful. The more we interact with you, you'll understand a little bit more of who we are, how we operate, and why we do the things we do. And I think that there's a lot of misconceptions that are out there. And it comes out a lot of times once people really get into the weeds of things, of how we do things, you get a better understanding. You know, it's, we want what's best for the community, and we want what's best for our officers. And, you know, we're open for input. We're open for conversations. It's not an us versus them. It's a team, and it's the best for everybody. So we really are looking forward to working with you all.
Yeah, everyone said it great, so.
Can I ask one last question? I just have one last question.
Yeah, this is the question session.
I know that there is no requirement that police officers live in the city of Cleveland. But what percentage of our police officers do you believe are Cleveland residents?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Oh.
So I think everyone knows at one point the entire division was all city workers had to live in the city, and that changed in about 2008 or 7, I believe. So you're seeing a lot more of it.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. You see a lot more of it, especially with the younger generation. We're seeing a lot more officers who are moving downtown. You see a lot more who are moving in the college areas. We have a lot of our members still live at home with their parents, you know, and they're from this area. So we don't track, you know, what the percentage is, but it's coming back around. It's popular again. And I was really surprised when I saw how many officers were moving downtown, because it's pricey, but they want the nightlife. So, you know, they're young, and, you know, they're active, and it's a short distance from work, and they don't have to have a vehicle. And, you know, there's so much to offer. So you're seeing it come back around again.
Thank you. Thank each of you, you know, for sharing with us. I have participated in the police ride-alongs for quite a few years, and so what you've shared definitely has helped me more in understanding behind the scenes a little bit more than, you know, that direct contact that I've had with the new cadets. So I appreciate your willingness to discuss with us, and I'm pretty sure that we'll have many more opportunities to do it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to quickly recognize Councilwoman House, who has joined us. If you'd like to say a few words, say hello, whatever.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Stephanie, I'm just coming from budget, so welcome to Ward 7 for those who are new here, and just wanted to say hello and just listen in the last hour or so. So thanks, everybody, for your work.
Sorry, I just have some questions again about the previous slide. If we could just go back, there's 3 things up there that sound very similar, and I just wonder if you could like break down the difference, and that is crisis intervention definitions, crisis intervention program, and then crisis intervention response. What is the difference between those 3?
Okay. To thoroughly go into the policies, I'd have to go look at them a little bit more, but the crisis intervention, they broke it out into 3 policies because there were so many definitions in those policies that you don't want to duplicate and put it into both, right? So we put a separate policy for definition, so when we state something in the policy, you have a reference point and you can go back to that definition and clearly understand what that means when it's listed in the policy. I believe the program is just the general overview of our crisis intervention program. The crisis intervention response is how we respond to those calls.
And you'll see there's several of our policies that are like that. If you look at our crowd management policies, it's similar. So it's one whole idea but there's so much information to it that it's broken down into different policies. So you'll have different aspects of each, just like our field force. You have crowd management, then you have a policy for mass arrests, then you have a policy for grenadiers, then you have a policy for field force operations. They're all related to the same thing, but there's so much information it's hard to put into one policy. And they have a little bit of a different, one is, like she said, definitions. One is the operations portion. So it's a little bit different, and that's why they're broken out. And it gives a better explanation and a better understanding.
Okay. And then I guess just a kind of a follow-up, another one, because I know in the consent decree it lists other diverse populations, like around mental health, homelessness, and diverse populations around different ethnic backgrounds, but none of these policies look like they're specific to any of those areas. Is there or has there ever been talks of creating policies that address those other areas that are not mentioned with these just special things?
Well, if you look at our policies, it depends on, I want to make sure I understand the question completely. So we have policies related to transgenders. We have policies related to handling mental health. We have policies related to interactions with the youth. So we do have policies that cover a lot of the different areas. They're just not in that list right there.
So does that mean they haven't been updated since the consent decree?
Well, yes.
If they're not listed.
If you have the access, if you look at the dates on the top, it will tell you the last updated version of that.
Okay.
So then that's the best way to track when the last time that policy's been updated.
Okay.
Commander Magooth.
Yes.
You talked earlier about the schedule for our training. For me personally, I think the police training is most important for us right now. How flexible will you all be as far as scheduling these trainings? I mean, like, how much advance notice are you going to need, or?
So a lot of it depends if it's, a lot of it depends if it's something we have prepared, right? So say you want knowledge about use of force training we provided to officers, we have it. I can bring someone in, we could talk about it. If it's something that we have to create or develop, it takes time. That is as much lead time as we have. So say we don't have a particular training on a topic, or we'll let you know that it doesn't exist, and we'll need a little bit of lead time. And it depends, I hate to say this, on what the topic is. Now, again, what we gave you is just kind of recommendations and suggestions. We can break it. I know I talked to Jason a little bit about it. I know you have the training subcommittee. If you would like, we can sit down with that committee maybe and work on, okay, what do we need? What can we do? Maybe a schedule and a path forward. And some of the things we'll do is once we define it is we can get you binders with information. We can get you flash drives with documents. We can get you whatever you need to help you understand. But we probably need to sit down and kind of discuss the topic of training just a little bit more versus just what the sheets were that we developed a while ago. So that would be my recommendation, and we're willing to do it. So schedule-wise, we're generally pretty flexible. So.
There's a training committee meeting next week. Do you think that you guys will be able to? What? Yeah.
Is it the same times? 6 to 8? Yeah, I mean, we're available in the evenings. Yep. So either I or Lieutenant Smith or someone could. Yeah. Oh yeah, if you get me the time and the location, we can have someone here to sit, or if not myself, Lieutenant Smith or someone to sit down and kind of go through some of that. Yep, absolutely, that's not a problem.
I have a few questions. My first question is a two-part question. First part is the structure of the current CDP the same as it was when it was over 1,300? And what percentage of the officers are on patrol versus those who are delegated for support?
Okay. I will, DC Todd's looking that up to get you the correct answer because I couldn't give you the breakdown, unfortunately. I will say that we have restructured. There has been some changes to the structure of the division. It's necessity, right? What the specific restructurings are, I don't think I could give you just off the top of my head, but it is something we could get, yeah. And then we'll get the totals for you, so you have the numbers. And if there's any other questions, we'll revisit it, and I'll come back to that once, actually, DC Todd has it.
So currently we have, I believe it looks like about 650 officers that are assigned to basic patrol. So the rest of those officers would be assigned to the support section.
Dr. Adams, are you? Okay. Are you guys able to give us the numbers of specific interactions or cases under some of these other topics? Like, can we see how many in the past year incidents that had to deal with youth? Can we see how many incidents involve search and seizure? Like, can you give us those numbers?
So we have analysts that if it falls under certain categories and it's a report that they can generate easily, we can get those. Just let us know what the ask is.
Who will we email for that? Should we email you or?
Commander Carney,
okay,
who's on that list.
Okay.
He oversees the compliance section, and the analysts work directly with him. And if it's something that they already have the numbers for, if it's something that they have to develop, then it would take a little bit longer. But if it's something they have access to, it's really a quick turnaround.
Okay, thank you.
Going back to the mental health response, does every call, if it's of a medical nature, automatically go to the police? Or if it's a probate order, who are the first responders?
So for mental health related calls, always goes to police first. Probate orders are issued by the courts and they come to police. So those are sent to the district where the person resides and they're served by police personnel, the probate warrants. But any call for mental health, police are the first responders. And when you have your co-responders team, again, even though it might be a mental health call, your patrol officers will be your first responders. Because the co-responders team has a civilian personnel, they don't respond to the scene until things are calmed some and it's not at risk for that person.
How come all mental health calls go to the police and not EMS? Like, even if a person doesn't have a weapon or anything, why wouldn't EMS respond? Like, who created the policy that all of that would go to police?
So this is something that is a citywide. There's plans, there's talks about, the care method, things like that, where there's changes. But currently that is the policy for the city of Cleveland, that police personnel are the first responders. And it's just, the same thing, police personnel are the ones who do the transport. It's not that we created this and we said, we want to be the first responders. That's a policy of the city of Cleveland. It doesn't matter if there's a weapon.
Could you explain specifically in regards to Tanisha Anderson, what were the revisions to your response policy form? That was a issue of mental health and it was an EMS call. If, say, for example, the family calls EMS first, it's designated as a mental health matter, are you saying that the police will automatically arrive and be the primary first responders?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that has not changed since?
So that is, police are the primary responders for all mental health calls. They're the first responders for it, unless there's a medical emergency involved in that, then EMS would respond as well. Like, say the person had cut themselves or had done something to try and physically harm themselves or somebody else. Police are the ones who are sent out.
So I believe that most paramedics, they have some CIT training or advanced training.
The paramedics?
Yes. Do they have any?
I don't believe so. But I can't say for sure because I can't speak on their training.
So you mentioned before, if there's a co-responder situation, whether it's the paramedic or a social worker.
Well, the co-responders are not paramedics. The co-responders are just police officers with a social worker. They work in a car together.
Right.
So they would respond as a team.
So would And you said that the person with the more advanced training would take the lead on that call?
So I think we're crossing a couple subjects. So a co-responder and a crisis trained officer are different. So we have officers who are assigned to the patrol section that are crisis intervention trained. Those officers would be the ones to take the lead on that call. So if we have a mental health call, the dispatchers have their lineup list with the officers who are working, and there's a box specifically for officers who are trained in the crisis intervention. And those officers would be the first requested to respond to those assignments. That's a little separate from the co-responders. That's they don't answer the calls for service. They're asked to come out, or they have follow-ups that they conduct with their social workers.
We will have access to the police. This is not the only night they're going to be here. Some of these questions are way off topic, and it's getting late. I would ask, first of all, I want to thank you all for coming out.
Absolutely.
And I would ask that we can move on, because we have some community members that have come in that now would like to speak. And we still got a lot of business to get through tonight. So if it's okay with the rest of you all, can we let these people go home? Oh, I can't control them from staying or going, but.
Is it on? Oh.
Yeah, it's on. It doesn't sound.
Hi, my name is Rosie Palfy. I'm a member of the City of Cleveland Mental Health Response Advisory Committee. It was one of the mandates under the consent decree. Crisis intervention is the only subject in the consent decree that does not fall under the police commission. So I wanted to address a few things, and I want to make it clear that I'm not throwing anyone here under the bus, okay? Because things that happen, they may not have known how they were supposed to happen, right? But so anyway, I had the pleasure of working with then Sergeant Hernandez to work on revising the crisis policies a year ago. So there's 3 policies. Deputy Chief O'Neill, who has since retired, sent us 2 policies. She sent us the response policy and the program policy, did not send us the definition policy. We had a subsequent meeting. I asked if we would see the policy's final version before they went to the court. I was told that we would. So I had to pay to go on Pacer to download the versions that were sent to the court because the city doesn't keep us informed. Again, this is not their area of, they weren't responsible for this. Okay, but here's the thing. We worked on this and somebody at the city removed language from the program policy. One of the big things that's in there is that every year the officers are supposed to get 8 hours of annual in-service training. They're not. They're getting 4 hours, and they may have gotten 3.5 hours this year because that's what the MRAC annual report says. The other thing, so I don't know who did that, but they actually took out 8 hours and they didn't change it to 4. Somebody at the city just said annual in-service training. So that could be 15 minutes of training, right? The other thing is Commander Maguth, I've never had the pleasure of meeting him, but he was on email threads with the Mental Health Response Advisory Committee training subcommittee. And so he never came to one of our meetings. I'm not criticizing him. He may not have been invited to any of our meetings. He mentioned that the CPC has a member on the training review committee. If you read the policy, which again was never shared with us, that came out at least 5 years ago, it says that when CDP is discussing crisis intervention, that a member of MRAC should be involved. So what I want you to know is that some of the things in policies, new policies, are not being carried out in practice. And again, I'm not This is not their fault, okay? The other thing is there's a lot of questions about crisis intervention. Every CPC, every version has had an MRAC liaison. Last time was Dr. Testa, before that it was Dr. Clegg. So one person would come to at least our main committee meetings. And it was great because they could come back to you all and give an update. I don't know if anything happened beyond that. We never got any written recommendations from the CPC. But one thing I would suggest is that you all create, ask for an MRAC liaison so somebody can come to these meetings. And the other thing is, I really appreciate all the questions about crisis intervention. It is extremely confusing, some of it, especially when you talk about training. So I would encourage you to read the 5 or 6 pages in the consent decree, and everything that Commander Todd said was correct. But what I want to get across to all of you is that all officers were given 8 hours of annual in-service training. Okay, the new officers, and if there's anything I say that's factually inaccurate, please fact check me. Okay. I'm almost done. So the officers in the academy were getting 20 hours of crisis intervention training. It's a PATA, it's state law. I think it might be up to 24 hours now. Oh, well, yeah, I jumped around. I'm sorry. So what I'm trying to tell you is officers in the academy are getting a lot, statewide are getting a lot of crisis intervention training. Okay. All of the officers, I think it was 2016, they got 8 hours of annual in-service training. It might have been 20, I'm sorry, 20, I think it was 2017. Yeah, it was. Okay. Every officer got, it's like mental health 101 training. Since then, they've gotten 4 hours of annual training for every year with the exception of 2020 because of the pandemic. So in 2017, they got 4 hours of crisis training. It was a mental health update and it was officer wellness. The following year, they got training, 4 hours of training about interacting with youth. Then there was the pandemic. 2021, they had 4 hours of training on autism. And then last year, they had 4 hours of training on autism. So I just want to get across. Sorry. Yeah, and I'm a homeless advocate, and I helped write the curriculum. Sorry, I'm going to be mad when I go home and watch this on TV. But anyway, I just want to get across the fact that just because somebody hasn't had the 40 hours of specialized training, I want you all to know that the officers are well trained, okay? And the entire reason for the 40-hour training, why it's being done the way it is because it's based on what they call the Memphis model, because CIT was created in Memphis in the late 80s following a tragedy. So that model is a blueprint around the country, and what departments are supposed to do is to ask for volunteers. The volunteers are vetted. Their commander has to interview them. They have to be vetted. They go through their service record, and if they've had any complaints related, like sustained complaints related to crisis intervention, use of force, things like that with crisis intervention, they're not eligible. So then they're on a list that goes to dispatchers for each district every day. And so if a call comes in and they know it's a crisis call, because they don't always know it's a crisis call until they get to the scene, okay? So if they know it's a crisis call, the dispatchers can try to dispatch somebody that's on that list that's had that special training. So I don't want to give people to have the idea that the officers aren't properly trained. Does that make sense? Okay, so yeah, thanks. Did I say anything wrong? That's all. I'm sorry. I'm just so used to it.
Hi, good evening again. After Rosie Palfy, there will be Lou telling you another side of the story. Even our officers are well trained, but sometimes it's not 100%. The existing ones are well trained, but they always get the new officers not really directly from the academy. They may be from other cities. However, we found out even during the year after issue 24 already passed, before you guys could actually take the oath and get sworn in, I heard we still have officers hired from other state. They did not go through the same vigorous training from the academy all the way up, but their backgrounds were not really fully checked. So that means, yes. No, I mean, throughout the time. Yes.
When our last lateral class has been, there was 3 people in 2021.
Yeah, but if we cannot show that their backgrounds have been thoroughly checked, that means they could be fired from other states' police department due to certain things they did not properly. So if they carry that same habit coming here, they will actually compromise all the good trainings our locally grown trained officers doing. And this is the reason why I have witnessed CIT officers with a pin actually in the shelter not actually have any kind of behavior to show this person should be carrying that pin. On the other hand, I have also reported in the MROC meetings that you have officers without the pin maybe, but they actually do a good job to help people. So the issue here is lots of officers, they did not voluntarily to receive the advanced training because they think these things are common sense. So by their own moral standard or their upbringings, they will just do that, even without advanced training. But if we also see the people with the training not doing their job correctly, this will be an issue. This is how the community having the kind of a misled or negative impression about our policing in Cleveland. Also, I just asked a question earlier. Now, if we have a social worker and an officer going out together, now think about that. The dispatchers has no training on physical health and mental health knowledge. The officers doesn't have that either. Social workers may have experience encountering these situations, but unfortunately, the social workers may not be the one in lead. And this is the reason why lots of people may not really even taken to diversion center right now we have in the county. And this is something which is actually common right now happening in the community. And I wish all the commissioners would check out the training. Not only that, but we have to look at the part which they have not mentioned. And that's why some of the good questions today you guys have asked are a good start. The things sometimes they don't show on the papers are really the things we should look at. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Okay. I personally need a quick recess. If someone would like to make a motion for a quick recess. Do I get a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. 5 minutes is good enough for me. All right. Commissioner Chura. Commissioner Donaldson.
Present.
Commissioner Early. Commissioner Garrett Ferguson.
Present.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Present.
Commissioner Widgeway.
Here.
Commissioner Van Leer.
Present.
Commissioner Wong.
Present.
Commissioner Zaid.
Present.
Commissioner Adams.
Present.
Commissioner Benito.
Present.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Present.
And I am Commissioner Greg Reeves, and we are going to move forward. Next, we're going to have Rules Committee. Are you ready?
Oh, yes. Training committee's not going first, okay.
We that training was from the training committee, so that was us. Or did you have something to say?
I think we just wanted to confirm that the meeting was for next week, and then just now we invited the police to come to that meeting next week, but I don't know if we need to make a motion or anything for that.
I don't think so, but I do want to ask you something. Didn't we say we were going to do the first and third Wednesdays? So we'll be opposite this meeting?
I don't know. I just know we do on the schedule for next week. I do know March 1st, 6 to 8 is on there, but I don't know if it's permanent.
Am I correct?
My understanding.
Okay. And what was the time? Was it 6 to 8 or 5 to 7?
We said 6 o'clock because Alana has.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know why in my head I'm thinking 5 to 7. So that's really all we need to do from the training committee, right?
Yeah, so we don't have to make a motion for the police. Okay. That was just making sure.
All right. So on your rules committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Reeves. Hi, my name is Terry Wong. I'm the Rules Committee Chair. So for the past 2 weeks, our committee has been expeditiously working through the operations and procedures manual in an effort to get us some structure and to get the bylaws set in place so we can move forward in an organized manner. So this, we edited section 1 of the operations and procedural manual over 2 meetings. This copy, this new edited draft was sent with an executive summary to all of the commissioners. I hope that everyone has had a chance to read over it or at least get a sense of the changes. So I just wanted to first open the floor if there's any questions that the Rules Committee can answer for you about the changes.
I was trying to pull it up. I just had a question around I think it said that we will try for around people attendance. Is there a reason it wasn't like a designated number of events or days?
Which section in particular?
It was around attendance and attending community events. It's like just what's reasonable. You change it from possible to reasonable. And I was just wondering why it wasn't like a specific amount of days or times.
Well, because those are, as I remember correctly, those are community events that are in addition to our committee meetings and our full commission meetings. We just didn't want, the commissioners to have to feel that we are, policing that because that is obviously dependent on other people's schedule. And we made quite a significant change to the absentee and tardy policies in an effort really to encourage everyone to participate fully. And we're, I think that there was much more wider latitude, but we also understand people have other lives and may need, and we could benefit if we take a break from every once in a while from thinking about commission work, being out in the community, being with our own lives, to clear our heads. So that was why we didn't want to obligate people to a set number because people on the outreach committee would obviously have more enthusiasm to go.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so the previous language, I believe, said as many as possible, and it was changed to as reasonable, because there was some, like, what does possible mean? Does that mean if every hour of your day, if you weren't sleeping or working, right, like, that you could technically be at an event? So the word reasonable was subbed in to kind of, to add a little bit more clarity around, we're not expecting people to spend all hours going to community events. In terms of why there wasn't a specific set amount, I believe that a big part of that was that what every commissioner, the work that each commissioner will do will be kind of dependent on what area they're focused on. Some commissioners might be on 3 committees, some might only be on 1, and we kind of understood that some commissioners, maybe instead of being on as many committees, might be going out to more public events. And so I think there is a general recognition of that might look really different for each commissioner based on what is the focus of their work.
Are there any other questions that we could answer for you before I moved on? I know there's a few minor changes that we want to make just that are important that Commissioner Van Leer noticed this morning. Any other questions or clarification? because we will be voting to pass the section tonight, so it would behoove us all to get clarification now. Okay, Commissioner,
Once the rules are voted and adopted, does that also mean we will enact the other 3 committees tonight as well? The outreach, police, because they're in the rules that these minimum have to be active, and we have been working without these mandatory ones. And so unless there's going to be language to change that says that it's no longer mandatory, then we would not be following the rules.
well, I mean, I think that this is actually related to a second issue with the major changes. One of the things that we need to resolve as soon as possible is that we did decide on the guideline of 3 minimum and 5 maximum per subcommittee. So right now we have 2 temporary or non-temporary, 2 committees that are over that number. So our hope is that but instead of us enforcing or a way to trim down those committees, that this would naturalistically occur, and it would be prompted by, I believe, those other committees opening. However, there is a concern that we don't know exactly what those committees will do yet, and we need a little bit more training and clarification on that, so the people with the right interests and the desire can be best served in those committees. So I don't think it obligates us. I mean, there's a few other things that kind of like we have to do this now, like with the deciding about the co-chairs, that we'll just leave up to, I guess, common sense at this point, and when the whole commission is ready to move forward. Our desire is to not to have to, because for example, if we change a date now, then we're gonna have to change it again back for the next year, right? Because for example, we would like by February of each year to elect the co-chairs, but we cannot do that right now because we were just initiated. So, and we need to get to know each other a little bit more. So with that caveat, I'm hoping that is okay with everyone to move forward.
So can we make a motion to change the language on page 11 so that once we adopt the rules, we are not in violation? Because without changing the language, we would be in violation.
And just a point of clarification, on the draft that was sent out, there was language added on the top of page 12. For the first class of commissioners, police-related committees will be formed after initial training occurs. So it should have been highlighted in red that there was a change made, recognizing your point about those committees needing to be formed immediately. So the Rules Committee did make a change there. That's why it's highlighted in red.
So, but that's separate. I think Commissioner Garrett Ferguson is referring to the outreach committee, which is not one of those highlighted members. But as Commissioner Wang said, I think, right, like technically we might be in violation of this until it gets started. But but I think that it's okay for us to operate on the understanding that as soon as we get things up and running, that we will start to do that. So like one of the concerns with, when we talked about, well, should we just start the, outreach committee now, so that then, right, we're following that. One of the things that's going to happen when we elect co-chairs is that co-chairs are not actually official members of any subcommittees. So therefore, they're kind of sit on all the committees. And so then when thinking about that 3 to 5 commissioner rule for each subcommittee, then in some ways it kind of behooves us to figure some of this out after we select the co-chairs, because then we'll know, okay, if we have a committee of 3 people and then 2 of those people happen to become the co-chairs, then all of a sudden that committee actually technically now only has 1 person. So
are we going to move forward, vote the rules in, and just disregard the rules when it benefits us? Is that what we're going to do?
I mean, how I would respond to that would be that there are certain pieces of this that just require us to get up and running. And in this case situation, we are going to, those very specific things, we are going to wait until we can actually form it.
I have a quick question. I'm not an expert on Robert's Rules of Order, but I've been studying.
To the chair.
Is this considered a debate?
Because it was question.
Okay, I'm just making sure. I just want to make sure we, if I have to step in or whatever.
So would we make a motion then, or make something on the record that notes that we know that we are in violation of these specific rules, even though we've already adopted them? We know we're going to be in violation of these rules until a chair is selected, and then have it laid out which rules we're going to be in violation of. Can we put that in writing?
Go to you or
It's
you?
the chair.
Well, I defer to Commissioner Ridgway.
Because you're the rules chair.
Well, she want to say something.
To the chair. When these bylaws are approved, it must be 15 days. Your microphone's not on. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm holding it. Sorry about that. Once these bylaws are approved, it must be 15 days after the approval before they can be implemented. So part of your discussion, is moot tonight if, when they are approved, because we have a 15-day, and that's in the rules manual. So even if they are approved tonight, it would be 15 days. And I think there's a second reading required too. Is that right, Jason? Is there a second reading?
Through the chair, yes, there's a, that's the part where we didn't get to it. So as some people had asked me, what do you do about that? You can suspend that last section and not have it part of consideration if you think that second reading is not required. That was meant to be for future rules, and that was an oversight of the Rules Committee. We didn't get to that last section before we voted to move this forward, so technically it wasn't considered in committee. I think it's section,
Very last.
bring it up here.
What page?
1.9, 1.926, page 26.
Just give me a second to bring it up. It was,
So I guess the question is, if we do not adopt 1.9, we don't have, to Commissioner Ridgway's point, we don't have an explicit timeline of when they will be enacted. However, I don't know if that addresses Commissioner Ferguson's point. It is well taken that we have some pragmatic problems here, that certain things have to go in order. We have, just for example, we've kind of did a stopgap for it, but the subcommittees are also in technical violation. We've left it up to those committees to decide how to get down to 3 to 5 people. So, I don't know if it's necessary. I had some concerns that unless we open the other committees, it would be hard. But then we would have to shuffle it again once we get co-chairs. That's our concern now, is that we don't have co-chairs. I think it was a general consensus in our Rules Committee that it was not time yet by the end of February to elect co-chairs. That was another major change to the bylaws, is that we would do a co-chair model, like equal, 2 people. It's good for pragmatic reasons for a cycle of 1 year, except that this year also would be less than 1 year because we're starting later.
So just clarifying. So to Ms. Ridgway's point, if we adopt tonight and we have those 15 days, in those 15 days, are we saying that 2 co-chairs will be selected, and then within those 15 days, we would then we would rectify the issue with the committees? Or because are we saying in 15 days we're going to have that, or?
Well, obviously, with any rule, it's not like when you break it, suddenly you're invited. And it's also our decision whether we have some latitude in getting time to fulfill that rule. What we're saying is that there's a pragmatic issue here, that if in an effort to fulfill those rules, are we causing more problems for us? Because I think what we wanted was some type of, the other rules are also very important, that we're not in violation of, but to have as a structure. So I guess it's open to discussion. Should we make language right now? Do you think I don't know if it's necessary at this point to make language right now to address Ms. Ferguson's point, that we just say, But however, superseding the February deadline or 15-day deadline, we would enact the rules about the committees and open the other committees after the co-chairs have been elected. We can just.
Yeah, I think I just trying to get clarity of timeline, because when are we thinking that we're going to elect a chair? And maybe that'll be more helpful. Like, when do we think we'll have chairs so that we will no longer be in violation?
To the chair, can I just comment really quickly? If you look at on page 26 of the manual 1.9, where we're looking, and that goes on from page 26 into page 27, we are concentrating. So there's three things we're looking at right now. One is this idea of the February deadline for voting for chair. But if you look to where Commissioner Ridgway pointed us on the last page, on page 27, where it says the rules in the manual take effect 15 days after the publication in the official minutes of the meeting, right? So that's where Commissioner Ridgway was referring. But if you go up, right, on that second bullet point under process, it also says, technically, we may not be able to vote on this today. It says the manual amendment must be read and discussed as a part of the agenda of a regular commission meeting, at least one regular meeting prior to the amendment being subject to a vote. So I'm not really sure. So I think this might be that first meeting. So if we're going to be in compliance, we may have to discuss it today, and then we may have to take the business of voting at the next meeting, if we're looking at what that last section says. I just want to throw that out there, Chair.
To the chair, we never edited 1.9. So we were taking out 1.9 completely and voting on the rest. So, I mean, that was one other way to, and I don't know if it means a separate meeting. It's not clear, that statement, that has to be, so that there's some ambiguity there.
To the chair.
Jason, please.
Just a point of reference, that's for an amendment, this would be an adoption. So that's if you're amending the manual after adoption. So this is not an amendment, this is the adoption of the initial manual. So that would be for future amendments that would apply. So this is not an amendment. This manual doesn't exist until you adopt it. It is not a rule.
Really quickly, I just want to ask, who are on the Rules Committee? Okay. Chair recognizes Commissioner Benito.
Yeah, so I want to make that clarification, and I don't know if a motion needs to go, but that last page, Commissioner Adams, I'm answering your question. That last page, we did not review it. So from what I'm understanding, Commissioner Wang is suggesting that we actually remove that page, which even if we were to adopt it, right, because these rules don't exist yet, we technically don't have to follow them because they don't exist yet. But to address some of I want to validate that there are some, right, like hiccups, that these same things that you're bringing up, we had discussion about in the Rules Committee. I had the same concern. I said, well, do we have to form this committee then now? Because so I hear you. I shared your concern. There are also some things that, right, like we can't adopt a chair until we adopt the rules. We can't nominate a chair until we adopt the rules because we have no rules right now for how to nominate and select a chair. So there's a little bit of chicken and egg happening where it's like we can't do some of the business that we need in order to then do things like open the other committees until we adopt the rules, so that we can actually do some of those things. So the other thing that I wanted to clarify, which I have now forgotten, so I'm going to leave it. I'm going to let it be.
I don't know which one of you all. Chair recognizes Commissioner Rodriguez.
Thank you. So I just want to point out, since we have committees already formed, I have a little concern, especially with moving and shuffling. Unless it's on its own accord, we have to ensure that it's fair, that there's not power dynamics into playing, and that we're not unintentionally, swaying any kind of decisions or agenda items. I know that may not be the popular thing to say, but I just wanted to voice my concern.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Early.
So just for clarification, I'm hearing two things, which is, one, we don't have a date of when we're going to elect the two co-chairs, right? And then two, did I hear correctly that there was a recommendation to wait at least 1 year to elect those co-chairs? Okay. You have a 1 year.
They'll have a 1 year term, the date that we do.
Understood. And so last point is, the last question then is, do we have a deadline to elect chairs so that we can begin to do business the proper way?
Chair recognizes Commissioner Benito.
So that was my last point that I forgot. So we didn't put anything in the rules about when this commission should elect the first set of chairs, because we didn't feel like that is the role of the rules committee. We're not the rulers of this committee. We are just setting up those bylaws and reviewing those procedures. And so we didn't put anything in there about when chairs would be selected by it, because that is a decision of the commission as a whole. So there's nothing that says that we could not tonight, somebody could make an order of business to nominate chairs. There's nothing stopping that from happening, but we didn't put anything in writing because we did not feel that's not our powers as the rules committee. That's something that that power belongs to the commission as a whole.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Ridgway.
To the chair. So one of two things could possibly happen. We could move to adopt an amendment to what we'll put on the table. That amendment, if approved, will give us the 15-day grace period before we can elect officers, finalize committees or whatever. Or we can, I don't know how you can leave it off. I hear that, but I don't know how you can disregard it. I hear that, but I don't think that's the way it should be done. I think we should make a motion to approve this amendment, which would be the 15-day grace period, so to speak, which would give us the opportunity to vote. We could actually vote it next time, and then you can begin to implement the bylaws. The thing about it, these are bylaws. This is how we operate. So there should be no loosey-goosey piece with it. Either we do the bylaws or we don't. And if we do the bylaws, we must abide by the bylaws as a commission. So I feel strongly that we just need to move to amend the piece that has already been put on the table to give us the 15-day grace period. We could adopt them at the next meeting and then be ready for implementation after that.
Commissioner Adams, was there something you wanted to say before?
Yes. To the chair, it's a lot of moving pieces going on right now. But I do want to clarify with the Rules Committee what I watched in the meeting online. So there was a discussion about these temporary committees, and I just want for clarification, because I thought what I heard was that the committees would be dissolved and kind of reconfigured. That's, you want to correct me? Because I just want to make sure that that's not, I just want to clarity on it, because I thought that's what I heard, but I wasn't.
I think there
Go ahead.
were multiple scenarios provided. The final decision was to allow, because the training committee, unlike the budget and grants committee, is a slightly temporary committee, and the other ones are more permanent. So there's two types of committees, and the rules committee will be more permanent. We were giving autonomy to those subcommittees to trim themselves down to 3 to 5. We could provide a deadline, but we thought that we would just give you the advice and guidance to do so. There was discussion about what is the fairest way to do this. Is it a random thing? Is it we obviously want the most enthusiastic and people with relevant skills to be on the committee. But our hope, I guess, was that there's going to be, right, so if the two co-chairs cannot be like on those committees or, you know, in the role of chair of those subcommittees, and then we want everyone to participate in some subcommittee, there's a lot of positions to fill. So the reason why we're vague with this is that I think that requires a little bit of soul searching of each commissioner to know where they want to put their time and efforts. And we want everyone to succeed. We want everyone to be in a position that they feel that their best talents are used. I had a discussion with Commissioner Van Leer on how to, and we did also in our meeting, on how to facilitate that. Will we take a poll of your first choices and your second choices, and then we have to, I guess, decide. I don't know who the arbiter would be. You know, so these are just things, but in an effort to, I think there's another alternative, if I may, Commissioner Ridgway. There's nothing to say that we can't adopt, the 15 days can be changed of that. Also, we can add language saying that this applies except for the first year, right? We already have a problem that we have to have the co-chairs by February. We're probably not going to do that. So we don't want to delay movement forward, but I think that maybe I'm just intuiting this. There's a general consensus we're not ready yet by the end of February to let co-chairs. I
don't think we should make assumptions about general consensus because
I didn't say consensus. I was just my intuition about some of the. We can vote on it if we want. You know, if we want to make it more explicit as to how ready we are.
I don't think we've ever had a conversation.
Not at each other, to me, to the chair,
so
and be recognized. So we don't have this.
I think the clarification is helpful. I just wanted to ensure that it's fair. So it was no attack to you. We appreciate you leading this initiative. We just wanted to ensure that if individuals was passionate about a certain committee, that we're not silencing their voice or mandating that, you know, that their interests, you know, I felt kind of concerned about that, but I'm glad that we're open to the suggestion at least. And we had a communication and I felt like you were very receptive.
So to the chair, I just wanted to, I know that there was a lot of discussion on the Rules Committee about fairness. About fairness and making sure that we're fair to all the commissioners. I'm not comfortable with the idea, because when we signed up for committees, we were, I think, just trying to like feel like what we needed to move our commission forward. I would propose that if we're going to dissolve some of the committees, it just feels like maybe everyone should have an opportunity to pick equally from the committees, instead of the Rules Committee in particular, just the one that comes to mind, just staying put. Because there may be other people who signed up for other committees because we were just all just like, this committee, I'll do this and I'll do that. I just feel like we might want to open them all back up. That's just something that, because there was a lot of discussion about fairness. So I just want to just throw that out there.
Real quickly, it's going on 3 hours, and we still got 2 more committees to go through. Please wait to be recognized by the chair, and then address the chair. Chair recognizes Commissioner Garrett Ferguson.
I just want a point of clarification. So if we were to do the amendment that Commissioner Ridgway has said with the 15 days, I'm confused around how that lines up with dates, because we technically would not have another full commission meeting within that 15 day, because we only meet as a full commission in 30 days. Like, so we would.
Every 2 weeks.
So it would we would fall from today. Would that actually be 15 days? Is that working days?
It'd be 1 day short. It'd be 14 days.
So it's including. That's what I'm trying to understand. What is it? Is it including the weekends? Is it including the working days? Like if we did that 15-day grace period, that meeting on the 8th, would that be in there? I'm trying to understand.
I think it's 8th. The 8th is 14th day.
Okay.
But we can change that number we can say
when we vote on it, it's done. Immediately. So that number is flexible. It's not like we can revise this number. That's what I'm saying. So if we need to. I did want to clarify Dr. Adams' point. It was always known that certain, Dr. Adams? Oh, sorry. I just want to make sure that Dr. Adams hears me. To the chair, my understanding, my recollection was that there were certain committees that were temporary and certain ones that were permanent. If the suggestion now, and we will have to vote on it, is that all the committees be disbanded, I don't know if that is pragmatically, possible. And that still requires the co-chairs to be elected unless you want to redo it again. So our proposal were that there are other committees, right, of police training, all those things. So many committees to fill, so many that need at least 3 and no more than 5, and there's only 13 of us, that it was only, we just want to trim it down to 5. We want to give you the latitude to do that within your subcommittees. And then we will move those people. How about this? The people that lead the committees can get first dibs on their next preference of committee, if that's a possibility. So I thought we had the understanding already that certain ones were temporary and certain ones were, and it now seems like people want to change committees. It's just creating a lot of confusion.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Benito.
So I think to understand what the rules are actually saying about the committee, there's no, Commissioner Adams is referring to some of the discussion that we had, which did include question about whether should we offer guidance on how to address the concern that after the rules are adopted, some of the committees will be out of compliance with the rules because they have more than 5. But as Commissioner Wang is saying, it was that we didn't want to direct that. That is going to be up to the subcommittees to determine how to change the membership to address the question of moving between committees. The rules, as the rules lay it out, it's organic, right? There's no process like specifically saying you have to, apply to be on a subcommittee. It's kind of this organic process that happens. If there is a contention, then I believe that the rules say that it would go to the co-chairs. If there were too few people, the co-chairs would nominate people, and then I can't remember if it explicitly says that if there's too many people. I think that's not specifically highlighted because, again, I think part of what we're dealing with right now when we signed up for the committees was there were only a couple, so people are excited to get to work, so they joined a few of them, and now there's kind of big ones. But once we open up, there's 4 committees other than the ones that we currently have standing. So those numbers will kind of immediately go down. Also, once we nominate the co-chairs and choose co-chairs, those people will be removed. So in terms of, to address the question of fairness of if somebody wants to be, for example, on the Rules Committee, chances are they would be able to join it pretty easily. And then, if not, if there's a committee that a commissioner would like to join, but it is currently full, a lot of people will organically move around the committees year to year. So maybe if you aren't able to serve on it one year, another year you'll be able to serve on it. So I just wanted to address that.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Van Leer.
Thank you. To the chair, I hope this doesn't get us, I feel like this has been discussed quite a bit. I'm hoping I can make a motion that would get us through where we started on this, which is that on page 11 it talks about that terms will be 1 year and co-chairs shall be selected no later than February of each calendar year. And on page 12 it mentions 3 committees that will be the police-related committees that will be formed after the initial training. I would make a motion to amend this document. So on page 11, where it talks about the co-chairs being selected no later than February of each calendar year, it says except for the first year of the new commission. Right. That would solve that problem, that we wouldn't be convening, going against our rules. And perhaps on the top of page 12 for the instead of saying police-related committees, we could be inclusive of the outreach committee and say new committees or committees that have yet to be formed as of this adoption of these rules. That way, that would keep us in the clear. So once we, vote on this, then we can form the committees when it makes sense, and we can elect co-chairs when it makes sense and not be in violation. So that would be my motion right now.
I'll second that motion.
Sorry, is that?
No. I was about to recognize Commissioner Garrett Ferguson.
It was kind of including that. I just didn't. Are we gonna do discussion after the second?
Yeah.
Because if you do a discussion, okay.
Yeah, the motion is on the right, and it's been second.
Debate should be pertaining to the motion.
Yeah, it's gonna be pertaining to the motion.
Okay, so we're gonna vote on it. He seconded.
Seconded.
I second.
Now there's discussion.
And I think you have to say if there's any discussion.
I thought the discussion was after the vote, but is there any discussion?
Okay. So a couple things. The first would be with that amendment to say new committees will be formed after initial training occurs. What are we defining as initial training? Because we've already gone through sunshine laws. We already had tonight was a training. So what is the time period for initial training? What does that mean? And then are we going to trim down committees before we enact those other 3 committees?
Well, it would naturally, Chair, it would naturally occur. It would naturally occur because once we open those committees, we're hoping, to the chair. Once we open those committees up and assuming people have had an assessment of themselves, they will move to those committees. So whoever wants it, we're hoping it's a voluntary process. What we're trying, these rules are set up to give you guys the freedom to do this. So we could step in, or the whole commission could step in, the co-chairs could step in. We don't have co-chairs at this point.
I'm just clarifying, does the trimming down and the opening up happen at the same time? That's my question. So that's where I want some clarity around. If we are gonna hold people accountable and say people should trim off if they're on those committees with more than 5 people, are we going to do that during the time they're open? Because it is not fair to trim, it's not fair to cherry pick the rules, and it sounds like that's what's happening because we are trying to say people should self-select off these committees, but we're going to have, because of what the rules say, but we're not going to open those other 3 until there's an initial training, but then we're not explaining what that training means, because in so many ways, we've already had mandatory trainings. So I would like to understand what does that mean? And then how are we?
What are we doing here? Come on, y'all. Let's try to abide by it. You were speaking.
So I'm just trying to just understand the 2 different things of, are we trimming and opening? Because I think if we're going to say people get off, then we have to do that at the same time people opening up. And I think we really need to define what initial training are with hours, list them out, because it's not going to be fair.
The chair recognizes Commissioner Adams.
Okay, so to the chair, from my understanding of watching the Rules Committee meeting last week, and correct me if I'm incorrect, but I think there was a couple things that went into their decision. One was, once we can pass the rules so that we can actually adopt co-chairs, they know that whoever the co-chairs are, they're going to be on some committees. So they discussed that, like, for example, what if the 2 co-chairs are on the committees that have 7 people? Now we don't have a problem with 7 people on the committee. So I think that they're trying to be fair. They are trying to give us autonomy, and they don't want to have a situation where we're forcing people off committees. I think they're acting in good faith. I know that it's like murky, but if you look at the meeting that they had, they understood the complexities of it. So I think they're trying to be fair and allow people to do commission work as they feel like they're like the strongest. But I also think that if the reality is we can't have more than 5 people on committees. So I just think they're hoping that things might work out, but if they don't, then we'll have to do something different to get the committees in compliance with the bylaws.
So could you repeat the motion again? To the chair, could we repeat the motion again?
Hold on, what did you just say?
Call for the vote, so we gotta vote it up or down.
Got to vote it up or down?
Well, we didn't define
Hold on.
initial training.
I know this, we're going way over time, and we're gonna have to table probably the rest of this meeting. So we need to get something done tonight. Yeah.
Cause I had a
Yes.
question, no one answered.
If it's a call for the vote, you gotta vote.
Right. So, call for the vote, we're gonna do it.
You repeat the motion. So the motion would be to the chair.
Mhm.
On page 11, where this draft mentions
And you're calling to approve with the.
that this would be
That's the motion.
amending this document. What? I'm sorry.
So
Yeah, so the quote, the terms will be 1 year and co-chairs shall be selected no later than February of each calendar year, with the exception of the first year of the new commission.
Right.
That would be the one amendment. The second one on the top of page 12, for the first class of commissioners, police-related, instead of saying police-related committees, it would say new committees will be formed after the initial training occurs.
I have a point of clarification.
Yes.
Is the motion to adopt the rules with these changes, or is it just to make
this
the
one.
changes?
Just the amendment.
Just the amendment.
Okay,
Just the changes.
okay. So then, there's no motion to adopt, it's just
Not yet.
the changes would be made. Okay, thank you.
So we're gonna go roll call. Commissioner Chura.
Aye.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Aye.
Commissioner Early.
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett Ferguson.
Nay.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Aye.
Commissioner Ridgway.
Aye.
Commissioner Van Leer.
Aye.
Commissioner Wayne.
Aye.
Commissioner Zaid.
Aye.
Commissioner Adams.
Abstain.
Commissioner Benito.
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Aye.
And I don't give a vote, so it passes by a majority.
Was there ever a motion on the table to accept
True.
the ballot?
What
I'm
happened?
just trying to remember whether there was a motion on the table at some point to accept the rules, and yours was an amendment to those
Amendment.
rules.
Right.
So what's the pleasure for what was presented? I mean, you could die on the table, whatever, we could choose to table it.
To the chair. I do have two other amendments. One, just I think the first one is a simple correction. I think it was an oversight of the Rules Committee. It's on page 26. And I would make a motion to 1. Yes, they did. 1.8.1.
No, it's printed differently. So if you mention the section, sorry.
Okay,
to
it's
the chair.
1.8.1. I'm not sure what page it's on yours. It's quorum and voting.
25.
Okay, and it says 2/3 of members currently appointed to the commission shall constitute quorum at a meeting. We've been operating on half plus one, a majority, simple majority as a quorum. I think this is just an oversight. I think it should say simple majority. So that would be my motion to make that amendment.
I second the motion. Is there any more? Was that the only amendment, Commissioner? Yeah.
Is that it?
Is there any
I
discussion?
second the motion.
Any discussion? Anybody? Anybody? All right, let's vote.
Or you can accept it with unanimous consent.
Yeah.
So I can just go, aye.
Any objections?
nay.
Any objections? Hence none, the amendment will be approved with unanimous consent.
Well, thank you.
I have
I need help. Yes, sir.
Apologies, but I do have one other suggestion amendment I'd like to make. What's on my, it's page 5 on mine, 1.3.1 ethical responsibilities. Based on our training the other week on conflicts of interest, here it says CPC members and staff are expected to conduct themselves in a fair and impartial manner and recuse themselves when significant conflicts of interest arise. I would make a motion to amend that sentence to say, when significant conflicts of interest or the appearance of conflict of interest arise. Based on the training we had, we talked about appearance and conflict.
Commissioner Garrison? Ferguson.
Just a question. What does it mean? What does it mean when it says appearance of conflict of interest? Do we have what that means?
Well, I'll let you answer that.
Okay, to the chair, from the conversation we had with Chief Thomas, there was a lot of conversation like if it's a family member versus a business associate. That was very clearly a conflict of interest. But if it's a little bit more removed, I think we talked about like if your friend is being is part of the police investigation that we're looking at, that could be maybe not technically a conflict of interest, but it may be present appearance of conflict. So that's where I'm headed with that.
I was about to say, it seemed like he described it as your conscience. Does it feel like this could be looked at? It wasn't no like definite definition. You know what I mean? Did you have something, Commissioner Benito? Oh, I thought you raised your hand. Is there any more discussion? Chair recognizes.
That was a motion.
I second the motion.
Yeah,
okay. Any more conversation? Commissioner Benito?
I guess one concern that I have with adopting that language in here is that this is determining the ethical conduct of a commissioner, and to say that appearance of a conflict of interest is subjective. So I think that I understand the intent behind it, but I think with that language, I have concerns about including that. I think that could be something that could be better addressed in the second part of the manual, which will have procedures, and especially relating to police investigation. So I think that it's something that we could potentially address in that part of the manual. But with it being a subjective term, I have some concerns about that. But I think that the underlying issue is valid, and I think there's other ways we could address it.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Wong.
But to that point, it's not conflicts of interest, it's significant conflicts of interest, which is already inherently a subjective term on who considers what's significant. I want to clarify the intent of Commissioner Van Leer. Was this something that you heard in the training that we received?
Yes.
Yes, it was. There was a conversation around what a conflict is and what the appearance is. May not legally or ethically be a conflict, but it presents to the public especially that it could be a conflict.
To the chair, so therefore I don't know that when we would be circumventing the training that we received from the law department, which I would not think, if we want to write significant appearances of conflict of interest, would that help to modify that? Is the word significant modifying both types of conflicts of interest?
I think I have it. I think a clarifying thing would be who would enforce it if there was one. Like if there is a conflict, who enforces it? Would it be chair?
It would be the law department.
Or the Ohio,
To the chair. In that
here's the
bullet
sunshine law.
point, Commissioner Van Leer can read the entire bullet point. There's citations of law in that bullet point. So
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So it starts avoid conflicts of interest. CPC members and staff are expected to conduct themselves in a fair and impartial manner and recuse themselves when significant conflicts of interest arise. CPC members and staff will not accept gifts, gratuities, or favors that could compromise their impartiality and independence or that have a substantial and improper influence upon the performance of their duties. As public officials, commissioners are subject to both state ethics law, Revised Code Chapter 102, Public Officers' Ethics, and the City of Cleveland Charter, Section 171.38, Ethical Conduct and Conflict of Interest.
Are we ready to vote? Anything else?
I was looking for.
All right.
If there was a slide.
Commissioner Chur. Commissioner Donaldson.
Nay.
Commissioner Early.
Nay.
Commissioner Garrett Ferguson.
Nay.
Commissioner Kennedy. Commissioner Ridgway.
Nay.
Commissioner Van Leer.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
Commissioner Zaid.
Nay.
Commissioner Adams.
Nay.
Commissioner Benito.
Nay.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Nay.
And the nays have it. Yes.
I wanted to bring up a motion to strike on page 19, 1.71. Under bulletin 9, there's a point that says minutes shall be kept in executive session and can be approved in subsequent meetings in executive session. And then it says check with law to verify. And looking at our last week's PowerPoint, it says that they're not required. So can we strike that? I'll make that motion.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Van Leer.
I would second that motion.
Is there any discussion?
To Chair, I'm not certain about the legal, because I've thought that it was required.
It's right here. This was the PowerPoint.
I know what you're talking about.
Not?
I thought when we discussed it, was that meetings would not be.
It says on 19 minutes.
No, I hear you.
So, if anyone wants to see, this is the PowerPoint.
So it's under ORC section 12122.
To repeat the motion, I said to strike from the manual on page 19, this section, this highlight where it says minutes shall be kept in executive session and can be approved in subsequent meetings in executive session. The motion I made was to strike that. And the reason I gave was on the PowerPoint, it says minutes are not required and will be public record if taken.
Let's see, needs to affect channel body.
We can't. So you're saying we don't want it back? Yeah. So she's saying because it's on that. It's just saying we don't have it.
Yes, I can't talk.
Point of order. Point of order.
Commissioner recognizes Commissioner Benito.
Oh, no, I don't have it.
Chair, oh.
No, I was just saying we got it.
Oh, for clarity, what I was saying is I think it should be left where it's not required because there might be times that we think we should and there might be times that we think we shouldn't. And I think once we put it in the manual that it has to be, I think that might take away from the purpose of what an executive session was created for.
Yes. Chair recognizes Commissioner Adams.
So to the chair, I would suggest that we just change shall to may, and then it gives us the option. If we feel like we need to keep records in executive session, because we were told in our training that if somebody keeps records, written records of the executive session, then they become public record anyway.
Right.
So I would suggest that we change shall to may, and to Commissioner Garrett Ferguson's concern, and then it kind of gives us the option to kind of proceed as we see fit. It gives us an option.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Zaid.
I support that because I think like if it's something, if we go into executive session for, let's say, an interview, we may not want that to be public, but then there might be other things that we want to be transparent with the public about. So I think that I agree with you.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Benito.
I just want to clarify because the copy that we worked from, the paper copy that we discussed, it actually did say minutes should not be kept of executive sessions. And so I think that we just had an error in how this version.
To the chair, I don't know if the copy I have has it gone through the law department, Mr. Goodrick?
To the chair, it was forwarded to law. So far, there is no comment. So these can always be edited. I just want to call your attention to time. We're kind of redoing the committee here. So if there's a lot of edits and people aren't ready to pass this, then it should be tabled back to committee where comments can be sent to committee in the interest of time, because It's not designed to redo the whole rules tonight. So if you guys don't feel comfortable, the best thing to do in the interest of time is to table this back to committee and then send your comments to committee, and they could bring this back to you more policy.
To the chair.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Early.
I was just going to make a motion that we table this and send it back to committee and come back to it at a later date.
No, yeah, there's still a motion floating around. We don't have, I don't know if we have to vote.
Table that motion.
Yeah.
We can table the motion and do a new motion, I guess.
I hear everybody. However, I do want to emphasize that this was sent out a week ago. There was room for questions, and not one person contacted me for the questions, except for my own committee members and Mr. Van Leer today. In the interest of having bylaws passed in a efficient manner, I'm hoping that if you want to take a second reading of the section that we've completed and direct any questions to me before our next meeting, so we can pass these bylaws. This is what we are here to give ourselves some ability to move forward as a commission.
Go ahead. I was going to say, what is the motion we have out there? The table is?
Current motion is on the executive session.
It was to strike that language from the
I
executive.
know, I just want to get to a vote.
Okay.
So we can, are we ready to vote? Is there anything else need to be said?
So I guess we should focus on hers and then do
And then move to
Commissioner Moore.
It was his meeting.
No, it was hers about the
executive session.
Executive session.
So this has to go to a vote, and then we have to go to yours. If that makes sense.
So the question is on the adoption to strike out
Right.
not keeping minutes in executive session.
This sentence on page 19, under 9.
Under page 19:9.
Yep.
Chairman,
Because right under that, it addresses keeping minutes in executive session.
So I'm assuming we had our debate and that we're ready to call a vote.
I want to get clarity. Is to strike the entire sentence?
No, just the not.
No. It was, the motion was to
You said the
strike
entire
that
sentence.
entire sentence because underneath that sentence, it gets to the transparency part that everyone spoke of, where it says the minutes of the meeting at which the executive session occurs must reflect specific lawful reason for that. So it still says you can still take it. It's just taking out that this will be mandatory. It's that pink
No,
was
mandatory.
highlighted red.
Point of
the chair
clarification.
recognizes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, that sentence is about the minutes of the main meeting, not of the executive session.
So on page 19, it
Right. says,
says minutes shall be kept in executive sessions and can be approved in subsequent meetings in executive session. That is only talking about executive sessions.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Zaid. Oh, you had your hand on the button. Sorry. Apologize.
No, my head was.
So we're voting on your motion now, right?
Yes.
If it's just, I just want to clarify, it's to strike that sentence,
Yeah.
but that was contingent on the second sentence answering the first sentence, but what I'm saying is the second sentence is referring to the main meeting and not the executive.
I'm sorry, excuse me, Commissioner Wayne. His motion will be to table it anyway. So let's get through this part and then Commissioner Van Leer.
I mean, the next sentence won't make sense without
Yeah,
that sentence.
without
so
that sentence.
That's all I'm
Right.
saying.
Exactly.
yeah.
I get it, but we're gonna table it anyway, so.
Chair, I think someone can withdraw this motion if it's causing too much confusion, and then you can move forward.
I can't, right?
Are we gonna vote on the motion or what?
We
Like,
just say we move to withdraw the motion, or does the person who put it in have to do it?
If the person who put it in, I thought she already asked to withdraw. Did you?
no,
Okay.
I did not.
Okay, so we're gonna vote on it. Commissioner Chura,
Nay at this point.
Commissioner Donaldson,
Yes.
Commissioner Early,
Nay at this point.
Commissioner Garrett Ferguson,
Yay.
Commissioner Kennedy, Commissioner Ridgway.
Nay.
Is somebody keeping count? I'm sorry. I didn't. Commissioner Van Leer.
Nay.
Commissioner Wong.
Nay.
Commissioner Zaid.
Nay.
Commissioner Adams.
Yes.
Commissioner Benito.
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Aye.
What's the count?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yeas. 1, 2, 3.
So 6
4,
nays.
5, 6 nays.
Nay for me.
All right, so nay tiebreaker. So nays have it. The motion does not carry.
And your motion.
So my motion was to table this particular committee hearing. I mean, this committee, particular document.
Right, right, okay.
I second.
Okay. Is there a conversation? Yes.
When we're saying send it back to the committee, right now, as it stands, there were no other comments that were sent to the committee regarding the document. So unless I think it's okay, I mean, I get it, we're an hour over, but sending it back to the committee, unless there are additional changes that you would like us to make, or questions which have not already been sent, because there were almost none sent, then why wouldn't we just table it to continue the discussion at the next full commission meeting? Because right now, sending it back to committee to do what?
If I can, then Chair, clarify.
Yes.
Then the motion would be to send it back to committee with questions coming from the other commissioners. There obviously are. We got a whole bunch. And I'm not being facetious or smart in saying that. I'm saying we have a lot of questions that are going around the table. And as our executive director pointed out, it's become another committee meeting. So to respect to you all's committee, one, I apologize for not responding. So I will take accountability for that. But to the rest of the commission, we should, in a timely manner, send our questions over so that by the next meeting, we're able to vote on this issue. So maybe I should amend my motion, which would be to send it back to committee with questions so that we can vote on it the next meeting.
I second.
Just to the chair, our next meeting for the Rules Committee, which we anticipate that you will have these questions for so we can enter into discussion, is March the 2nd. So you already have the copy. I think Jason can send an amended copy of the things that we made today. So I'm just going to trust that those things will be sent to, directed to me, so it's not the entire committee. So it's by March 2nd, before our meeting at 5.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Gary Ferguson.
For transparency purposes, can some of us come to that rules meeting? Because I'm concerned about sending so much documents about something as important as this via email. And I know that's why I didn't respond. I wanted to have it be on the record where it was going to be like live stream so other people can see the discussion and different things. So I would ask, are we allowed, because I know there's a lot of rules about what we can do via email. So is it okay if some people come to the rules and ask those questions for transparency's sake? Because I think there's some rules from the from our ethics training around emailing, because you guys can't respond back to us via email, if that was what I thought.
Which one? Commissioner Benito.
And you can respond back?
Commissioner Benito's been recognized.
So to answer your valid question, the rules around email, all email that we're sending out is subject to public records, right? So anyone can access our email, request documents, our email. So I do want to say that I do believe that there's transparency there. And the thing about email is that there cannot be a discussion via an email thread with all 13 commissioners, or technically more than 7, at a quorum, because then that would be a meeting, which is why when documents can still be sent to the entire group, but then discussion needs to happen when responses are being sent, like Commissioner Wang requested. If you have any questions or comments, please direct them to me. One-on-one, communications, or even 4 people emailing one another, as long as it's not a quorum of a subcommittee, is not considered subject to the open meeting laws. And so that was confusing when we did that training, so I understand that. But yeah, so there's nothing that says that we can't email one another and have discussion that way. It just can't be an email chain with all 13 people. What
Can we attend the rules committee to ask questions?
So
That was a specific part of the question.
can I
but you all-
respond?
really, seriously, this is, I'm sorry, I apologize.
I mean, I do
But
want to
we're-
say, the point of
this
the
is-
rules
Wait,
committee
let-
is to
so
have these discussions.
The chair needs to recognize
Sorry.
folks before they speak.
To share.
It was-
Commissioner
I mean,
first.
Sorry, just because Commissioner Benito answered the first part, so I just didn't know if Commissioner Benito was going to answer the second part of the question, which was just, can we come to the rules committee meeting?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yes.
if you're not on the, okay, that was my question.
It's public.
I think you gotta sit in the audience part, you know,
Okay.
I think, but, yeah. Commissioner Wong.
However, I do want to say that, it would be much more efficient if if we gather all of the concerns and then you have to trust the rules just as we trust the other committees. We have to trust that the rules committee can be broad-minded enough, and we've obviously shown a certain level of latitude and complexity here in dealing with these issues. So, in the interest of time, because, our last meeting was also very, very long, that's why we didn't get to the last part. And maybe there's some typographical errors because of that. So I guess, and I agree with, concur with Commissioner Benito's point. This is, if it's done, I don't understand the difference in transparency, because we will be talking about the issues that any of the commissioners bring up. So we will, and if it makes it, if we will say this commissioner has brought this concern up. But I guess I'm just concerned that it is still the autonomy of the Rules Commission to guide the discussion. I don't know what the dynamic will be if there's, of course there's comments, but if the debate extends out from that point.
I'm sorry, Chair recognizes
To
Jason.
the chair, the standard is anyone can attend a committee meeting, they just cannot vote or introduce a motion.
Right.
You're welcome to attend. The chair of that committee or the co-chairs of that committee can recognize you for comments if you request it. But you are allowed to attend, but you cannot participate in the business. You have to request that to the chair to participate.
Out of respect
The votes.
to all of our time, can we vote on this motion now?
Could we repeat the motion?
Commissioner Early.
It was to table it, and we send stuff to.
Table it with questions.
To the chair.
My motion is to table this discussion, send it back to committee with timely comments and notes, or to show up at the next meeting so that we can vote on it in our next general body meeting.
Commissioner Chura. Commissioner Donaldson.
Aye.
Commissioner Early.
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett Ferguson.
Aye.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Aye.
Commissioner Ridgway.
Aye.
Commissioner Van Leer.
Aye.
Commissioner Wayne.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong. Sorry. Commissioner Zaid.
Aye.
Commissioner Adams.
Aye.
Commissioner Benito.
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Motion to adjourn.
Any discussion? Well, one thing, and I know I'm not supposed to say anything, we have to make a motion to move these committees we didn't get to the next meeting, like the budget committee, the hiring committee. They never even had a turn.
We have to make a motion. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the agenda. Yeah. We're not gonna have any new business or old business. You know, actually, I read in Robert's rules, I can just adjourn it. I don't even need a vote or
We can
nothing.
make a motion to adjourn, perhaps? And
Okay.
I make a motion to adjourn with the remaining agenda items being moved to the next meeting.
I second that motion.
Any conversation?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Aye.